Chapter 845. Prophet of the Fifth Dimension. Lian Xian was very clear that whether it was the fifth dimension or the fourth dimension, no one could kill a prophet. As long as he did not want to die, absolutely no one could kill him. Since he would not die, where did he go? After a while, Lian Xian shook her head, no longer thinking about this question. The most important thing now was to return to the fifth dimension. Although it was dangerous to return, it meant that there was a greater chance of finding her master. At this time, Lian Xian withdrew her thoughts and looked not far away. In the distance, Yi Xian stood up. Under the restoration of the spring of life, his injuries were recovering extremely quickly. Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the black lightning. Avoid its sharpness, find its flaw, and kill it in one strike. After pondering for a long time, Yi Xian suddenly slashed upwards, and a sword qi pierced through the air. However, before this sword qi could approach the black lightning, it disappeared without a trace. At this time, the black lightning suddenly fell from the sky at an extremely fast speed, so fast that Yi Xian's scalp went numb. Without any hesitation, he turned around and ran. His speed was also very fast, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the horizon. Lian Xian, Yi Xian's aura disappeared, and the black lightning paused in the air for a moment before returning to its original position. Seeing that the black lightning did not chase after him, Yi Xian stopped. At this time, Lian Xian appeared beside him, and Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. Lian Xian looked at Yi Xian. "You continue." Yi Xian nodded. He looked at the black lightning, and his brows deeply wrinkled. The power of this black lightning far exceeded his, and it was impossible to resist it head-on. However, if he did not resist it head-on, how could he win? At this time, Lian Xian suddenly took out a piece of wood that was as long as an arm. She looked at Yi Xian. "This piece of wood, where do you think is the easiest to break?" Yi Xian said, naturally, "The middle." Saying this, he was stunned. The middle. At this moment, he suddenly understood. Flaw. When facing an enemy, if he could find the opponent's flaw, wouldn't it be twice the result with half the effort? The answer was naturally. Yi Xian looked up at the black lightning. What was the flaw of this black lightning? Lian Xian asked, "Do you know what the realm of ordinary swordsman is?" Yi Xian looked at Lian Xian. Lian Xian said softly, "The so-called ordinary sword is actually the essence, seeing through the essence. Just like this piece of wood in my hand, you said that it would break easily if you used force from the middle. That's true, but if we look further and more thoroughly, you'll realize that if you use fire, it would actually be easier to destroy it. Of course, the difference in strength is too great. Fighting the weak with the strong, you can use any kind of strength. But in order to defeat the strong, you have to find a way to use your strengths to attack the opponent's weaknesses." As she spoke, she looked at the wooden stick in her hand. Everything in this world has its counter. For example, if an ordinary person wanted to break this piece of wood in my hand, it would not be easy, so they would choose to use knives, saws, axes, or fire. Yi Xian was silent. Lian Xian continued, "You're fighting someone stronger than you. The gap in strength is huge. If you still insist on fighting head-on, that would be foolish. Do you understand?" Yi Xian nodded. "I understand." Lian Xian continued, "The so-called ordinary sword refers to the essence of all things. It's not easy to see through the essence of all things, but you have to walk in this direction." Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Is the sword of the plain-dressed woman an ordinary sword?" "More than that." Lian Xian said in a deep voice, "She's definitely far more than the mortal realm. As to what level she's reached, I don't know, and I can't evaluate, because I'm not qualified." Yi Xian nodded slightly. "I understand." After saying that, he looked up at the black divine thunder in the sky. How could he defeat this black divine thunder? Yi Xian fell into deep thought. Flaws. He knew that he had to find flaws, but flaws were not that easy to find. Lian Xian glanced at Yi Xian, but did not say anything. Yi Xian had to rely on himself. At this moment, Yi Xian's eyes suddenly lit up. Got it. Lian Xian looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already in the sky. At this moment, the lightning suddenly fell. However, at this moment, Yi Xian disappeared. He entered the emptiness realm. The lightning suddenly stopped in the air, because it had lost its target. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared behind the lightning, and at the same time, he slashed at the lightning with his sword. Boom! The lightning shook violently, and Yi Xian was directly sent flying. However, as soon as he flew out, he disappeared. He entered the emptiness realm again. The lightning was stunned. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared above its head, and stabbed down with his sword again. Boom! The lightning shook violently, and countless bolts of lightning shook the surroundings. Yi Xian was sent flying again, but just like before, he entered the emptiness realm again. The lightning was silent for a moment. Suddenly, it shook violently, and an expanse of lightning erupted. In an instant, the entire sky was turned into nothingness. Yi Xian was right beside that bolt of lightning. At this moment, he was rather shocked because he noticed that the energy of that bolt of lightning didn't cause any substantial harm to him. Of course, he was still affected by the shattering of this space. However, with his physical body, it was practically not affected at all. In other words, so long as he entered the emptiness realm, he would be invincible during this period of time. At this moment, he truly realized how terrifying the boundless sword was. This sword technique was meant for assassins. Of course, he could only execute the boundless sword 3 times in a short period of time. In other words, he could only enter the emptiness realm 3 times in a short period of time. Now, he didn't choose to attack again. Instead, he retreated to the side and started to recuperate. Not far away, the lightning was still wreaking havoc. It was obvious that it was very irritable. Just like that, the lightning continued for about an hour before it finally stopped. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of it again. The lightning instantly shook violently, and an expanse of lightning shook. However, Yi Xian disappeared again. The lightning shook in the starry sky, and the entire starry sky directly trembled. Below, Lian Qian shook her head and smiled. She knew what method Yi Xian was using. Grind. I can't beat you, but I will grind you to death. Needless to say, this was also a method. In this way, Yi Xian grinded it bit by bit. During this period, he was still very careful because the power of the lightning was too strong. It was not something that he could withstand. Therefore, he could only rely on grinding, not brute force. In the past, when he fought with others, he relied on the executing heaven's sword in his hand and his strong physical body to fight head-on. But now, he was fighting the strong as the weak, so he could not use brute force. And now, the lightning was being ground down by him until it became more and more irritable, while Yi Xian was cultivating. In an unknown area, a woman was slowly walking in the void. The woman had a head of silver white hair, a petite figure, and a calm but indifferent gaze. After an unknown amount of time, she suddenly stopped. At this moment, 3 old men suddenly appeared in front of the woman. The 3 old men hurriedly knelt down, and the leading old man said in a trembling voice, "Master, you've returned." The woman slowly closed her eyes. "Tell me about the current 5th dimension." The old man said in a deep voice, "Since the prophet disappeared, the order of the 5th dimension has suddenly become chaotic. Although that person from the heaven domain is still there, Master also knows that without the prophet's support, she does not have the ability to rule the 5th dimension." Saying this, he paused and then said, "As far as we know, these years, she has been frantically searching for the prophet, but there is not the slightest clue." After a moment of silence, the woman said, "What is her current strength?" The old man shook his head. "No one knows because she has not appeared for a very long time." The woman nodded. "Continue." The old man said, "Besides her, the master of the southern sky dome realm, Jian Shui, is also searching for the prophet." She is even crazier. In order to find the prophet, she has already entered the unknown void dimension and has not returned, void dimension. Hearing this, the woman's eyes narrowed. That was an unknown dimension. In history, only one person had entered and returned. That was the prophet. After he came out, he smiled and said, "The world is really mysterious." The woman said, "What about the Myriad Dimensional Academy?" The old man said, "At first, after the prophet disappeared, they searched for him. But later, the new master of the Myriad Dimensional Academy, Chen Tian, stopped searching. Instead, he started searching for the world prison pagoda that the prophet once left. However, the female teacher of the Myriad Dimensional Academy is still searching." Female teacher. Hearing this, the woman looked at the old man. "What realm is she now?" The old man shook his head. "I don't know. The last time she appeared was 1,000 years ago. At that time, she appeared in the Immortal Residence Forest where the prophet once lived. At that time, she was riding a little donkey and holding a scroll." After a moment of silence, the woman said softly, "She still can't let it go." The old man hesitated before asking, "This subordinate doesn't understand why she is so persistent in searching for the prophet." The woman said, "When she was 6 years old, her parents discovered that she was born with a missing soul and a physical body. Moreover, she was mentally deficient and could not cultivate for the rest of her life. Then, she was abandoned in a mass grave and left to fend for herself. It was the prophet who passed by and took her away. Although her soul was missing, she was the most accomplished person under the prophet. If she liked to fight, the current master of the Myriad Dimensional Academy would not be that Chen Tian." The old man nodded slightly. This female teacher's prestige in the Myriad Dimensional Academy was very high. No, it should be said that her prestige in the entire fifth dimension was very high. This was because she did not fight and was kind to others. At this time, the old man suddenly said, "Master, we already know that the world prison pagoda is in the hands of a youth called Yi Xian in the fourth dimension." Yi Xian. The woman's eyes suddenly flickered. "I know." The old man said in a deep voice, "Chen Tian is preparing to make a move. It is said that his target is not only that youth Yi Xian, but also a female swordsman. This time, they are prepared to do it for real." At this point, he paused before saying, "Master, this pagoda can open the all-creation book house. Therefore, this subordinate made the decision to send people there. As long as Chen Tian makes a move against that female swordsman, our people will make a move against Yi Xian." At that time, the woman suddenly said, "Let them come back." After saying that, she frowned. That was because she had blurted out this sentence without even thinking about it. It was like an instinct. The old man was somewhat startled. "Master." After a moment of silence, the woman said, "Let them come back." The old man looked at the woman and did not dare to refute. He nodded slightly and quietly retreated. After the old man left, the woman opened her palm and a wooden figure appeared in her hand. Looking at the wooden figure, scenes suddenly appeared in her mind. "Wow, brother, do you want to eat fish tonight? It smells so good, brother, why aren't you eating?" "Brother has eaten. Look, my belly is so big." "Brother, did you only order a bowl of noodles?" "Brother, I ate. Look, my belly is so big." "Brother, if this illness of mine cannot be cured, after I die, put my ashes in a small bamboo tube and keep it by your side. I want to be by your side forever, okay? If it cannot be cured, brother will accompany you in death." "Why?" "Brother does not want you to be alone in the other world." Chapter 846. After a long time, the woman put away the piece of wood in her hand and said softly, "You are a good brother." After saying that, she disappeared on the spot. In the starry sky, there was a tremor of lightning. The surrounding starry sky began to tremble violently under the influence of this tremor of lightning. After a moment of silence, a snow-white sword light suddenly appeared above the head of the lightning. In the next moment, the sword light slashed down in a straight line. Boom! The black lightning trembled violently, and then a wave of lightning surged out. The sky shook violently. However, Yi Xian disappeared again. Grind. Yi Xian was now relying on grinding. In fact, although he could not defeat this black lightning, he had gained a lot. Play to his strengths and avoid its weaknesses, avoid its sharp edges, find its flaws, and kill it in one strike. Now, he had learned how to play to his strengths and avoid its weaknesses. As for looking for flaws, he had just begun. Looking for flaws was not an easy task. Especially this divine lightning, which seemed to be flawless. However, he knew that there must be a flaw. Beside him, Lian Xian looked at Yi Xian, who was constantly grinding the divine lightning in the distance. She was a little surprised because Yi Xian's comprehension was really good. Although he was not a super monster who could understand with a single point, at least he was working hard. Hard work. Her master had once said that innate talent was bestowed by the heavens, but hard work was more important. If one did not work hard, they would be wasting their talent. And Yi Xian was working hard. This continued for about 10 days. Yi Xian could now fight with this black lightning for about an hour. In this hour, he perfectly resolved many of the black lightning's attacks. However, he still found it difficult to counterattack. This was because once he got close to this black lightning, he would have to face it head-on. With his current strength, he was completely unable to do so. After a while, Yi Xian stopped and returned to Lian Xian's side. He looked at the divine lightning in the sky. Miss Lian Xian, if I defeat this black lightning, can I directly enter the fifth dimension? Lian Xian looked at Yi Xian. What are you thinking about? Yi Xian looked at Lian Xian. What's wrong? Lian Xian said, this divine lightning is only the first stage. You've defeated it, but there's still a second stage, a third stage, a fourth stage, a fifth stage. Yi Xian was speechless. Lian Xian continued, you still have a long way to go, understand? Yi Xian nodded. Understood. Lian Xian glanced at the godly lightning. Maybe you can think of another way. With that, she turned around and left. On the spot, Yi Xian was stunned. Think of another way? Exchange for what? Yi Xian looked at the divine lightning and pondered for a long time. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and the corners of his lips curled up. He suddenly thought of something. Why did he only use his sword? Thinking of this, Yi Xian shook his head, feeling a little silly. Without thinking too much, he suddenly turned into a beam of sword light and soared into the sky. As soon as Yi Xian made his move, the black lightning in the sky suddenly trembled. Immediately afterward, countless lightning bolts shot out from the sky. At this moment, the space Dao Law suddenly appeared between Yi Xian's brows. In the next moment, a blood-red prisoner word suddenly appeared on the lightning bolt. As this word appeared, the lightning bolt was directly covered by a red light. At the same time, a mysterious force enveloped the black lightning. This time, the black lightning seemed to sense danger. It trembled violently and terrifying lightning bolts shot out continuously. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. He disappeared again. Secretly, Yi Xian was quite excited at this moment. He had not wanted to use the 6 paths of truth, infinite sword, and sword domain to kill his opponent. Instead, he wanted to see if his strongest attack could pose a threat to his opponent. However, he had not expected that when his sword domain enveloped his opponent, he would make a new discovery. A flaw. Under the envelopment of his sword domain, he discovered the flaw of the lightning bolt. As soon as the lightning bolt stopped, Yi Xian suddenly appeared above it. In the next moment, his sword domain enveloped the lightning bolt. In the blink of an eye, numerous beams of sword light slashed at the lightning bolt. Bang! Countless bolts of lightning exploded, and Yi Xian was instantly blasted flying. When he stopped, he immediately looked up at the lightning bolt. At this moment, the lightning bolt had become slightly illusory, but it quickly condensed. Yi Xian's face instantly sank when he saw this. Right at this moment, the black lightning in the distance suddenly vanished. Hiss! Yi Xian's pupils constricted abruptly, and he swiftly raised his sword horizontally to block it. Bang! An expanse of lightning erupted before him, and then he was blasted flying. During the process of his flying, lightning bolts exploded incessantly around him. When Yi Xian had stopped, countless lightning bolts were shooting at him like a storm in front of him. Yi Xian was shocked, and he didn't hesitate to enter the emptiness state. Countless bolts of lightning flashed through the starry sky, and it was extremely shocking. This time, it continued for around 2 hours before it stopped. Below, Yi Xian looked at the lightning that covered the starry sky above him, and he felt a lingering fear. He'd sensed that the black lightning had really been infuriated just now. Why had it been infuriated? That was because his sword had injured it. Meanwhile, Lian Qian appeared by Yi Xian's side. She looked at the black lightning and said softly, "That sword strike of yours can be stronger." Yi Xian looked at Lian Qian, and she said, "Burst out with speed. You can utilize the spatial Dao laws to enhance your sword strike, allowing your sword strike speed and strength to reach its limits. Coupled with the characteristics of your sword domain, you can find its weakness and give it a lethal strike. Of course, it's not very possible for you to kill it with your current strength. However, it's already very good." Yi Xian nodded. When he'd first faced the black lightning, he'd almost been instantly killed by it. But after a month of battle, even though he still couldn't defeat it, he was much better than before. Because he could injure the black lightning now. Moreover, the black lightning couldn't injure him as easily as it had in the beginning. He'd improved too much. Meanwhile, Lian Qian suddenly said, "Let it hit you." Yi Xian was stunned. Lian Qian looked at the black lightning and said softly, "This isn't ordinary lightning. If you let it temper your body, not only will your body be greatly strengthened, but you might even gain some special subordinates. For example, you might be immune to lightning in the future." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Miss Lian Qian, this isn't a joke." Lian Qian looked at Yi Xian and said, "You were blasted by it once, but didn't you survive?" Yi Xian was speechless. Lian Qian said, "This is a superb opportunity to improve your physical body, because your current physical body has already reached an extremely formidable level. If you want to improve it further, then unless you have a great fortuitous encounter, it will be very difficult to do so." Lightning strike. Yi Xian was a little hesitant. Because he still remembered the first time he'd been struck by lightning. It was really unbearable. It could be said that if he hadn't already attained the sword body, he would have been dead. He still had a lingering fear towards the divine lightning. At this moment, Lian Qian said, "The divine lightning can't kill you in one strike. So, if you can get used to the bombardment of the divine lightning, your body will definitely improve to another level. This is a great opportunity for you." Yi Xian thought about it and nodded. All right. He only had one thought in his mind, and that was to improve his strength. An hour later, Yi Xian raised his head to look at the black divine lightning. He had to admit that he was still a little afraid of it. The power of the divine lightning was too strong. Without much hesitation, Yi Xian transformed into a beam of sword light and shot into the sky. At this moment, the black divine lightning in the sky shook violently, and then it fell straight down. When he sensed the power contained in the divine lightning, Yi Xian's expression changed. To be honest, he wanted to run. However, when he thought of the benefits that the divine lightning would bring him, he decisively abandoned the thought of running. Soon, the divine lightning blasted his body. Boom! Yi Xian instantly fell from the sky, and as he fell, bolts of lightning kept exploding on his body. Ah! In the starry sky, Yi Xian's scream suddenly rang out. Soon, Yi Xian stopped. At this moment, he had already put a very, very long distance between him and the divine lightning. After the divine lightning blasted him away, it did not choose to pursue him, but retreated to its original position. Yi Xian lay quietly in the starry sky, and his whole body was constantly flashing with lightning. At this moment, he had lost consciousness. His whole body was numb. At this moment, Lian Qian appeared beside Yi Xian. She glanced at Yi Xian and had to admit that Yi Xian's body was a little terrible to look at. Without thinking too much, she waved her right hand, and a white bottle appeared beside Yi Xian's mouth. The spring of life. After the spring of life entered Yi Xian's body immediately recovered at an extremely fast speed. Just like that, about an hour later, Yi Xian sat up. At this moment, his body was still sore and numb, as if all the bones in his body had fallen apart. That kind of feeling was a little sour. Lian Qian glanced at Yi Xian's body and said softly, "It really is useful." Hearing this, Yi Xian was stunned, and then said, "Miss Lian Qian, don't tell me that before this, you weren't sure whether it would be useful or not?" Lian Qian nodded, "I guessed that it would be useful, but reality has proven that it is." Yi Xian, Lian Qian said, "Come, continue. What you need to do now is to continuously use the divine lightning to temper your body, over and over again. In any case, you need to completely adapt to the power of the divine lightning." Yi Xian nodded, and he looked up at the black lightning in the sky. Now, he was no longer that afraid of the divine lightning. In any case, he couldn't kill him. What was there to be afraid of? After resting for a while, Yi Xian stretched his body, and then he looked up at the divine lightning in the sky and grinned, "Continue." As soon as he said this, he turned into a ray of sword light and shot into the sky. At this moment, the divine lightning in the sky suddenly descended. An instant later, boom! The entire starry sky suddenly trembled. Chapter 847. After a few breaths, Yi Xian lay down again. Just like before, his whole body was covered in injuries. About an hour later, Yi Xian rushed over again. Just like that, Yi Xian used his body to withstand the heavenly lightning again and again, letting the heavenly lightning temper his body. About 10 days later, his body became more and more capable of withstanding. In the beginning, when he was struck by the heavenly thunder, he was almost killed. Although he didn't die, it took him quite a while to stand up. But now, after being struck by the heavenly thunder, he recovered in 15 minutes at most. This proved that his body was becoming more capable of withstanding. However, this was far from enough. Continue. While Yi Xian was bitterly cultivating, Yi Xian and the other four-dimensional experts also came to this part of the starry sky. When they saw Yi Xian using his body to resist the heavenly lightning, they could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. They had been here for so many years, so they naturally knew how terrifying the heavenly lightning was. But they did not expect that Yi Xian would actually use his body to resist the heavenly lightning. How strong was his body? Everyone became more and more afraid of Yi Xian. Just like that, about 2 months later. On this day, Yi Xian suddenly walked in front of the black lightning. The black lightning directly fell, and a lightning light instantly submerged Yi Xian. The lightning light dissipated, and Yi Xian walked out. At this moment, he could completely use his body to resist the black lightning. However, he still could not kill it. The current situation between him and the black lightning was, "You can't kill me, and I can't kill you." After its attack failed, the black lightning returned to the sky. Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the black lightning. At this moment, the black lightning suddenly trembled violently. Then, it suddenly turned into a bolt of lightning and fell straight down. This time, Yi Xian still did not dodge. Facing this black lightning, he no longer had any fear. At this moment, the aura contained in the black lightning suddenly soared. Yi Xian was startled. Before he could react, the black lightning had already submerged him. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the entire starry sky was covered by black lightning. The entire starry sky flickered with lightning, and it was incomparably terrifying. About a quarter of an hour later, Yi Xian slowly walked out of the lightning. At this moment, his body was surrounded by lightning. The black lightning that had struck him had already retreated to the horizon. After a moment of silence, it suddenly disappeared. Seeing this scene, some of the fourth-dimensional experts in the distant starry sky looked at Yi Xian one after another. They knew that Yi Xian had passed the first test. From the fourth dimension to the fifth dimension, there were a total of 5 stages. As for this Yi Xian, he could be considered to have passed the first round. However, the subsequent rounds would only get stronger and stronger. At this moment, Lian Xian appeared in front of Yi Xian. She sized up Yi Xian with a look of surprise in her eyes. Your physical body. When Yi Xian looked at his physical body, he was dumbfounded. Originally, his skin contained countless sword intents and sword chi, but now, there was not only sword chi and sword intent, but also thunder and lightning. They had already fused with his sword intent and sword chi. Now, he not only had a sword body, but also a lightning body. Of course, the toughness of his physical body was a level higher than before. Harvest. Yi Xian took a deep breath. The torture during this period of time had not been in vain. Lian Xian said, "Absorb the sword." Yi Xian looked at Lian Xian. She said, "The foundation of your physical body is extremely good. Even if you make another breakthrough, it won't have any negative effects on you." Yi Xian nodded. Okay. After saying this, he took out a sword and began to absorb it. As soon as the sword entered his body, a wave of pure energy erupted from his body. However, it disappeared without a trace in an instant. All of it had been absorbed by his body. Yi Xian was stunned. Then, he took out another sword and absorbed it. As soon as this sword entered his body, it was completely absorbed. Yi Xian did not stop and took out another sword. Just like that, after about an hour, he had absorbed all 30 swords. When he absorbed the last sword, a powerful aura suddenly swept out from his body. Wherever this aura passed, ripples appeared in the space like waves. He had not broken through yet. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and slowly closed his eyes. In his body, waves of powerful aura constantly vibrated. Beside him, Lian Xian looked at Yi Xian and did not disturb him. It was not easy to reach the fate state. The so-called fate state was to no one's destiny. He had to rely on himself. Otherwise, he would be stuck at this step for the rest of his life. Fate. The so-called fate referred to fate. At the beginning of chaos, the fate of all living beings seemed to have been predetermined. It was like birth, old age, sickness, and death. Especially death. Since ancient times, who could avoid death? Where there was life, there would be death. This was the law and the fate of all living beings. And because some people became stronger and stronger, they could feel a trace of their own fate. What was his future fate? Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. He was a little confused. Fate. What was the future? From the beginning until now, he knew that he was different from others. Many powerful people knew him. More accurately, they knew him in his previous life. Previous life? What was his previous life? It was still the same question. His previous life was his previous life, and this life was this life. Fate. Yi Xian took a deep breath. My fate is in my own hands. Boom. A powerful aura erupted from his body. This aura was like a wave that shook the surroundings. In the blink of an eye, the entire starry sky trembled violently. Fate state. At this moment, Grand Elder Chen suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. He smiled. Congratulations. Yi Xian opened his eyes and slowly stood up. He clenched his fists and a powerful force gathered in his body. Fate state. At this moment, he understood the true meaning of the fate state. The fate state was not about feeling fate, but understanding the meaning of fate. Nothing was destined at birth. For example, the lifespan of humans was only a few decades in the beginning. But through cultivation, it could be 100 years, a few hundred years, or even a few thousand years. Fate was in one's own hands. Unless one accepted it, it could not decide one's life. Fate state. Yi Xian relaxed his hands, and the aura emitted from his body immediately calmed down. At this moment, Lian Xian suddenly said, Congratulations. Yi Xian nodded slightly, then looked at Grand Elder Chen. Is there something I can help you with, Grand Elder? Grand Elder Chen nodded slightly. Young friend, I'm afraid your current strength has reached the Tao breaking realm. Tao breaking? Yi Xian said gravely, what realm are Emperor Shi and the others at? Tao breaking? Grand Elder Chen shook his head. I can only say that they are infinitely close to Tao breaking. But they have not truly entered the Tao breaking realm. Yi Xian asked again, are there any Tao breaking experts here? Grand Elder Chen said gravely, there are. But very few, only 2. And they haven't appeared for a very, very long time. I don't know if they are still alive. Tao breaking realm. Yi Xian fell silent. Even in the 4-dimensional universe, he still had a long way to go. Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment, in the distant horizon, the 5-dimensional barrier suddenly trembled violently. Yi Xian and the other 2 hurriedly looked up. Under everyone's gaze, the 5th dimension under everyone's gazes, the talisman characters on the 5-dimensional barrier slowly dissipated. What's going on? Everyone frowned. Lian Xian looked at the 5-dimensional barrier, and her pupils constricted. Not good. They're going to destroy the restriction. Destroy the restriction? Yi Xian said gravely, wasn't this set up by the prophet? How could it be destroyed? Lian Xian stared fixedly at the 5-dimensional barrier. It was done by one of our own. One of our own? Yi Xian frowned. Miss Lian Xian, what's the meaning of this? Lian Xian said gravely, the Myriad Dimensions Academy. This restriction was set up by Master. If others want to break it, it'll be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Only our own people can break it. No, not break it, but remove it. At this point, she took a deep breath. Someone is using the knowledge Master taught them to remove this restriction. Grand Elder Chen said, this is a good thing. Idiot. Lian Xian suddenly said angrily, this is a good thing? Do you know what's between the 4-dimensional universe and the 5-dimensional universe? It's a space dimension that you can't cross. Once it's removed, the power of this space dimension will directly devour your 4-dimensional universe. Of course, people like you are strong enough to resist this power, but what about others? Is everyone in the 4-dimensional universe as strong as you? Once this power enters the 4-dimensional universe, not even a blade of grass will grow. Hearing this, Grand Elder Chen was silent. In fact, after cultivating to this point, he might have some compassion in his heart, but right now, he couldn't sacrifice himself to help Song Mountain. What did Song Mountain have to do with him? Was it selfish? It wasn't selfish. After all, they didn't have the obligation to save the world. In the starry sky, the runes became fewer and fewer. Around them, more and more people appeared. Emperor Shi and Daoist Mountain Ghost also appeared. At this time, many people were excited because they discovered that the restriction was becoming weaker and weaker. Once it disappeared completely, it meant that they could enter the 5-dimensional universe. At this time, only a blood-red rune was left in the sky. The rune just floated there, and the barrier had completely disappeared. In the field, someone suddenly said, break this rune and you can directly enter the 5-dimensional universe. Hearing this, everyone looked at the blood-red rune. At this time, Lian Xian suddenly said, no. Everyone looked at Lian Xian, and she said in a low voice, if you break this rune, you can enter the 5-dimensional universe. However, if you break this rune, the power of the spatial dimension will enter the 4-dimensional universe. At that time, your universe will be destroyed. In the distance, a middle-aged man said indifferently, what does this have to do with us? Lian Xian looked at the middle-aged man and didn't say anything. She knew that these people wouldn't sacrifice their future for the living beings of the 4-dimensional universe. This was human nature. She didn't have the qualifications to stand on the moral high ground and criticize them. At this time, a middle-aged man suddenly rushed into the sky. Immediately, a powerful force directly blasted the blood-red rune. Boom! The blood-red rune instantly shattered, and the space there suddenly split open. At this time, a middle-aged man in white appeared in everyone's line of sight. Chen Tian. Lian Xian, who was beside Yi Xian, suddenly said in a low voice, the current schoolmaster of the Myriad Dimensions Academy. The middle-aged man smiled. If everyone wants to enter the five-dimensional universe, there's one more thing you have to do. After saying this, he looked at Yi Xian below. Kill him and use his head to exchange for a pass to the five-dimensional universe. P.S. I'll give everyone another red packet. Remember to snatch it. Chapter 848. Kill Yi Xian. All the spectators were stunned when they heard this. Kill Yi Xian in exchange for a pass. Soon, the expressions of many people became extremely unsightly. Kill with a borrowed knife. This expert from the fifth dimension wanted to borrow their hands to kill Yi Xian. In other words, he wanted them to fight with Yi Xian. Those who had lived to this age naturally understood Chen Tian's intentions. Not far away, Yi Xian looked at Chen Tian. It seems that your real target is me. Chen Tian sized up Yi Xian and smiled. Of course it's you. Yi Xian opened his palm and the World Prison Pagoda appeared in his hand. You want it? Saying this, he suddenly put it away and grinned. I'm not giving it to you. Chen Tian was not angry. He smiled. It's fine, I can get it myself. Saying this, he looked at the experts from the fourth dimension. This is your only chance in this lifetime. As long as you kill him, I can let you enter the fifth dimension. Kill Yi Xian. Everyone was silent. If Yi Xian was easy to kill, they would definitely not hesitate. However, was Yi Xian easy to kill? The problem was that he was not easy to kill. Moreover, could this person's words be trusted? What if they fought with Yi Xian and both sides were injured? What if he refused to let them enter? Wouldn't that be stupid? At this time, Taoist Mountain Ghost suddenly said, Your Excellency, we just want to enter the fifth dimension, that's all. Chen Tian looked at Taoist Mountain Ghost and smiled. But you were born in the fourth dimension. Taoist Mountain Ghost asked, Can't we go to the fifth dimension if we were born in the fourth dimension? Chen Tian shook his head and smiled. That's not it. It's just that I was the one who broke teacher's restriction, so I have the right to decide who can enter or not, right? Taoist Mountain Ghost still wanted to say something, but Chen Tian said, I don't have much time, so you better not waste it. Otherwise, you will regret it later. Taoist Mountain Ghost fell silent. Everyone else was silent as well. In the air, Chen Tian looked at Yi Xian and smiled. As long as one is alive, it's fine to not be strong. However, one must know one's own limits. What kind of strength you have, what kind of things you should have. If you overestimate yourself, your ending won't be too good. Yi Xian smiled and said, If I give you the pagoda, will you let us go? Chen Tian laughed, You won't, because you are a swordsman. A swordsman's sword can be broken, but it cannot be bent. Therefore, you would never beg for life in this way. I also advise you not to think of playing any tricks. In the face of absolute power, all conspiracies and schemes are useless. Yi Xian smiled. Why don't you go look for her first? This she was naturally the woman in a plain dress. Chen Tian laughed and said, Because you are easier to kill. Yi Xian fell silent. These fellows weren't stupid. They knew how to fight first. At this moment, Chen Tian looked at Taoist Mountain Ghost and the others who were not far away. Have you thought it through? Taoist Mountain Ghost looked at Chen Tian. Do you think we are idiots? No one would attack Yi Xian. Firstly, Yi Xian was not easy to kill. Secondly, even if they killed Yi Xian, Chen Tian might not let them enter the fifth dimension. It was very stupid to pin their hopes on other people's pity. In the air, Chen Tian smiled slightly. Very good. As he said that, he spread out his palm and pressed down lightly. The space behind him suddenly split open and soon, an extremely powerful aura spread out from behind him. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed when they sensed this force. Dimensional power. This was not something the four-dimensional universe could withstand. In the distance, Daoist mountain ghosts stared at Qin Tian. You want to destroy the four-dimensional universe? Me? Qin Tian shook his head and smiled. Are you kidding me? You should know that it was you who destroyed the last restriction rune. Therefore, you are the ones who want to destroy your universe. As his voice fell, a black gas spread out from behind him. Everywhere this black gas passed, space turned into nothingness and disappeared completely. Sensing the power of this black gas, everyone's expression became extremely ugly. If this endless black gas was allowed to enter the four-dimensional universe, the entire four-dimensional universe would really be devoured. In the air, Qin Tian looked down at everyone and smiled. Are you afraid? As he said that, he looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, I can give you a chance. If you hand over the pagoda, then your ancestors. Yi Xian suddenly shouted angrily. In the next moment, a sword light soared into the sky and slashed at Qin Tian. In the air, Qin Tian narrowed his eyes and punched out. Bang! A few dozen feet in front of his fist, the sword light was forced to stop. And at this moment, a blood-red prisoner character appeared above Qin Tian's head. Sensing this, Qin Tian's pupils shrank. Immediately after, he turned around and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already thousands of feet away. Qin Tian stared at Yi Xian with a sinister expression. That Xiao Ta actually recognized you as his master. Yi Xian ignored Qin Tian and turned to look at Daoist Mountain Ghost and the others. Everyone, we want to go to the fifth dimension, but we will not go in kneeling. Go in kneeling. Hearing Yi Xian's words, the blood of the four-dimensional experts started boiling. They were all people who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years. How could they not have any self-respect? How could they not have any backbone? Yes, everyone wanted to go to the fifth dimension. They all wanted to break through and live forever. But not by kneeling down and begging for it. It was good for people to live, but if they did not have dignity and backbone, then they might as well be dogs. At this time, Daoist Mountain Ghost suddenly said softly, "Little friend Yi Xian is right. As a person, we must have some dignity and backbone." As he said this, he looked at Qin Tian. We, the people of the fourth dimension, are indeed not as strong as the experts of the fifth dimension. However, we don't need your charity, nor do we need your pity. Qin Tian laughed. You have a backbone. Unfortunately, what's the use? Your four-dimensional universe is about to be destroyed. Isn't that right? Daoist Mountain Ghost laughed. Today, the old man will protect the four-dimensional universe. Not for anything else, but to fight for pride. Of course, the old man really doesn't like you. As his voice fell, he suddenly turned into a black light and soared into the sky. In the starry sky, he clenched his right hand and pressed it down. He roared, "Sky-supporting pillar." Boom! A huge black hand that was a few hundred meters long suddenly tore through the space above his head, and then the huge hand directly grabbed the black aura. However, as soon as it came into contact with the black aura, the huge hand started to turn illusory. Seeing this, Daoist Mountain Ghost's expression suddenly became serious. The black gas was stronger than he had imagined. At this time, Emperor Shi, who was not far away, suddenly looked at Qin Tian and laughed. Are the people of the fifth dimension superior to the people of the fourth dimension? I also don't like you. As his voice fell, he suddenly stomped his right foot. Boom! A powerful white beam of light soared into the sky. This white light directly collided with the black gas. Rumble. In the starry sky, the black gas trembled violently. However, this white light was unable to stop them. In the sky, Qin Tian looked down at Emperor Shi and Daoist Mountain Ghost. He laughed. You don't want to take the road to life, but you insist on taking the road to death. Just because of your so-called backbone and dignity, how ridiculous. As he said this, he looked at Yi Xian. Just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Chi! A wisp of sword light tore through the battlefield. Chen Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. Hiss! Before he could finish speaking, a blood-red, prisoner, character suddenly appeared above his head. At the same time, a mysterious force enveloped him. Sword domain. Chen Tian's expression was calm. He clenched his fists tightly. Boom! The blood-red, prisoner, character above his head directly became illusory. At the same time, the sword light in front of him was forced to stop. Chen Tian stared at Yi Xian. The sword is a good sword, and the divine skill is a good divine skill. Unfortunately, in my eyes, you are too weak. As his voice fell, he fiercely punched out. Boom! Yi Xian instantly appeared tens of thousands of feet away. As soon as he stopped, the space within thousands of feet behind him directly exploded, turning into nothingness. Chen Tian frowned slightly. Your physical body, he did not expect that Yi Xian would be able to withstand his attack. In the distance, Yi Xian stretched his muscles and then looked at the distant Daoist mountain ghost. At this moment, Daoist mountain ghost suddenly said, "Little friend Yi Xian, we can't hold on any longer." Yi Xian looked at the black gas. The black gas was increasing in number. Daoist mountain ghost and emperor, she could no longer hold on. After pondering for a moment, Yi Xian looked at Pavilion Elder Chen and the others below. Everyone, if the nest is overturned, how can the eggs remain unbroken? We are now people on the same boat. We will prosper together, and if we suffer together, we will suffer together. Only by joining forces can we survive. At this moment, Chen Tian, who was not far away, suddenly laughed. No, we are only targeting you, not them. Hearing this, the fourth dimension experts suddenly hesitated. At this moment, Pavilion Elder Chen suddenly stood up. Everyone, little friend Yi is right. If the nest is overturned, how can the eggs remain unbroken? If we do not help Daoist Mountain Ghost and little friend Yi now, in the future, we will find that no one will help us. Moreover. At this point, he looked at Chen Tian and laughed sinisterly. Moreover, the old man is also very unhappy with this person. Fight with him. Let them know that the people of the fourth dimension are not ants. We are not people that they can bully as they please. As his voice fell, he directly turned into a beam of white light and soared into the sky. Behind Pavilion Elder Chen, Qin Shi and more than 20 top experts of the fourth dimension attacked one after another. Boom boom boom. In the starry sky, as Pavilion Elder Chen and the others attacked one after another, the speed at which the black gas spread instantly slowed down. However, it did not stop. Instead, the black gas increased in number. In the distance, Chen Tian was silent. He had originally wanted to use the experts of the fourth dimension to target Yi Xian, but he did not expect that these people would choose not to. Moreover, these people had come to oppose him. He had to admit that he had underestimated the people of the fourth dimension. Recollecting his thoughts, Chen Tian looked at Yi Xian, who was not far away. I don't want to waste time. Aren't you a swordsman? Then I will let you die under my sword. As his voice fell, a sword suddenly appeared in his hand. The next moment, this sword suddenly flew out and slashed at Yi Xian. The moment this sword appeared, Lian Xian's horrified voice suddenly rang in Yi Xian's mind. Not good, this is the fifth dimension's third sword. It is not something you can resist. At this point, she suddenly stopped. Had Yi Xian ever been afraid of a sword? At this moment, Yi Xian's expression suddenly changed. His face was filled with terror, as if he had been shocked to the extreme. Seeing this, Chen Tian smiled. Chapter 849. A sword descended in a straight line through the starry sky. The sword was completely snow-white, and there was a speck of blood red at its tip. It was like a plum blossom in the snow, and it carried a trace of coldness amidst its beauty. Yi Xian seemed to be extremely terrified as he watched the sword descend. The expressions of Daoist Mountain Ghost and the others instantly became unsightly when they saw the expression on Yi Xian's face. They could be said to be one with Yi Xian, so they naturally didn't want anything to happen to Yi Xian. Because if something were to happen to Yi Xian, then it was equivalent to losing a formidable ally. But now it seemed like something bad was about to happen. Meanwhile, the sword had arrived above Yi Xian. It was very calm and didn't emanate any energy fluctuations, but everyone knew that it couldn't be ordinary. But right at this moment, Chen Tian's expression suddenly changed. Because he noticed that while Yi Xian had a terrified expression on his face, Yi Xian showed no signs of fleeing or counterattacking. Something's not right. Chen Tian didn't hesitate to withdraw the sword. However, Yi Xian suddenly shot into the sky. He was extremely swift and collided with the sword, and then the sword instantly pierced through his head and into his body. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they witnessed this scene. What's Yi Xian trying to do? Chen Tian was slightly stunned as well. He hadn't expected that Yi Xian would actually do this. Is he giving his life away? Right at this moment, his pupils constricted. Because he noticed that Yi Xian was completely fine after the sword pierced into Yi Xian's body. Moreover, Yi Xian's aura had grown even stronger. What the hell is going on? Chen Tian stared fixedly at Yi Xian, and his intuition told him that he might have done something extremely stupid. Yi Xian greedily took a deep breath, and his aura rose explosively. This time, he didn't suppress it. He couldn't. Because the power contained within this sword was too terrifying. It was more terrifying than any sword he had absorbed before. It could be said that this sword was infinitely close to his executing heaven's sword and soul-suppressing sword. He had to break through. Yi Xian was shocked. Breaking through at this time? Wasn't that asking for death? Chen Tian also noticed that Yi Xian was about to break through because Yi Xian's aura was still rising crazily. Chen Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He was just about to attack when Yi Xian suddenly said, "Chen Tian, you old dog. You're not human." Everyone, Chen Tian looked at Yi Xian. What? Do you want to have a civil battle with me? Yi Xian said angrily. Chen Tian. At this time, Chen Tian suddenly interrupted Yi Xian. You're trying to buy time. That's a good idea. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished, and a powerful force swept down from the sky. Everywhere this force passed, space was instantly reduced to ashes. In front of Chen Tian, the four-dimensional space was as fragile as rotten wood. Yi Xian's face instantly sank when he saw this. He was about to break through now, so how could he resist? Right at this moment, a woman suddenly appeared in front of him. Yi Xian was stunned when he saw this person. Enlanxiu. Enlanxiu stared fixedly at Chen Tian, who was charging down. Break through quickly. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly transformed into a spear light that shot into the sky, and her spear was like a thunderclap that carried the might to pierce through the sky. Yi Xian didn't think too much about it and hurriedly sat down cross-legged. Break through. He had to break through as soon as possible. In midair, Chen Tian watched Enlanxiu charge at him with an expressionless face, and he smashed his fist against the spear in Enlanxiu's hand. Boom! The spear light in Enlanxiu's hand instantly exploded, and at the same time, Enlanxiu instantly retreated. Because her retreat speed was too fast, her body directly tore through space, and fresh blood unceasingly flowed out of her mouth. Chen Tian's strength was too great, and it wasn't something her body could withstand. Chen Tian didn't care about Enlanxiu, and he directly charged towards Yi Xian below. Compared to Enlanxiu, he wanted to get rid of Yi Xian even more. Because Yi Xian had given him too many surprises. Just as Chen Tian appeared above Yi Xian's head, a man suddenly blocked in front of Yi Xian. Mo Xie. Mo Xie looked up at Chen Tian, who was hovering above his head. Suddenly, he let out an enraged roar and charged directly toward Chen Tian. As he did, the illusory image of an old man appeared behind him. This illusory image was even more solid and powerful than before. Clearly, in this period of time, Wuxia's strength had greatly increased. In the air, Chen Tian glanced at Wuxia, and he stomped down with his foot. Boom! The phantom instantly exploded, and Wuxia's entire body fell from the sky. As he fell, his body cracked open layer by layer, and fresh blood spurted out. Chen Tian looked down at Yi Xian. He was just about to attack again, when a sword light suddenly appeared behind him. The speed of this sword was faster than lightning. Chen Tian's brows creased slightly, and he turned around and punched out. Rumble. At the point where the fist and sword met, a powerful force suddenly exploded out, and a petite figure retreated explosively in the starry sky. This person was Shao Qi. Shao Qi retreated a few thousand meters before stopping. However, the moment she stopped, she raised her sword above her head with both hands. She stared at the distant Chen Tian, and her sword suddenly slashed downwards. Heaven-breaking sword. Qi. A strand of sword light shot out from the tip of Shao Qi's sword. Qi. The starry sky was torn apart. This sword, like its name, could break the heavens. In the distance, Chen Tian was expressionless. Just as the sword energy was about to slash his body suddenly became illusory, and then the sword energy mysteriously disappeared. On the other side, Shao Qi's expression suddenly changed, and she suddenly turned around. Instant sword. Just as she finished speaking, her body disappeared like a ray of light. Chi 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 chi, wrong. The space in front of her was suddenly torn apart by countless sword lights. In less than half a breath's time, the space was directly torn apart by thousands of sword lights, and these sword lights appeared almost at the same time. Instant. In fact, it wasn't just one sword instant, but 1,000 swords instant. In an instant, 1,000 swords appeared. Meanwhile, the space that was enveloped by the rays of light suddenly exploded apart. Rumble. A figure rapidly retreated in the starry sky. It was Shao Qi. Shao Qi suddenly held her sword vertically between her eyebrows. Protect. As soon as she finished speaking, strands of sword qi suddenly appeared behind her. These strands of sword qi instantly formed a sword shield behind her, and it didn't take long for her to stop. However, a trace of blood seeped out from the corner of her mouth. In that pitch-black space, Chen Tian walked out. He stared at Shao Qi, and there were actually 3 sword scars on his face. At this moment, he had to admit that although the overall strength of the 4th dimension was far inferior to the 5th dimension, there were still many people in the 4th dimension who were very outstanding. Whether it was Yi Xian just now, or these 3 people who just appeared, even in the 5th dimension, they were all at the peak. Especially this little girl in front of him, the strength of her sword Dao had exceeded his expectations. At this moment, Shao Qi, Wuxia, and Enlanxiu all arrived beside Yi Xian. Although Wuxia's injuries were more serious, fortunately, he had the spring of life, so it wasn't fatal. Shao Qi glanced at Yi Xian below. He still needs an hour. An hour. In other words, they had to stop Chen Tian for an hour. In the distance, Chen Tian glanced at Shao Qi's group of 3. It's time to end this. In the next moment, he suddenly vanished. Shao Qi's group of 3's expressions instantly changed. They were just about to attack when Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of them. They were stunned when they saw Yi Xian. He broke through. In next to no time, their expressions sank. Because Yi Xian hadn't broken through. Moreover, Yi Xian's aura was extremely chaotic, and he showed signs of qi deviation. Yi Xian stared fixedly at Chen Tian, who was charging at him. He suddenly opened his palm, and a strand of sword energy suddenly flew along his arm into his palm. When they saw this strand of sword energy, everyone's expressions changed. Chen Tian even stopped and retreated almost 30 kilometers in a frenzy. Chen Tian stared fixedly at the strand of sword energy in Yi Xian's hand, and his eyes were filled with fear. Yi Xian took a deep breath. It was one of the 3 strands of sword energy that the woman in a plain dress had given him. It could be said that it was his greatest trump card. He'd never used it. Even if it was extremely dangerous at times, he still hadn't used it. Because he wanted to return it to her when he met her again, and he wanted to tell her that he'd grown up. But at this moment, he had no choice but to use it. He knew that even if the 4 of them joined forces, they wouldn't be able to defeat Chen Tian. Moreover, if he allowed Shao Qi and the others to stop Chen Tian, then the 3 of them might die. He didn't want anything to happen to Shao Qi and the others. Moreover, he didn't want Shao Qi and the others to be beaten half to death before he utilized this strand of sword energy. He didn't want anything to happen to them at all. His younger sister had left him all along the way, so he didn't want to lose any more friends. Yi Xian looked at Chen Tian in the distance and said softly, "Go." As soon as he said that, the strand of sword energy in his hand flew out. In the distance, Chen Tian's pupils suddenly shrank, and he suddenly put his hands together. Heaven and earth converge. As soon as he said that, the space in front of him suddenly closed, and at the same time, mysterious forces continuously gathered in front of him. At this moment, the strand of sword light suddenly disappeared. Chi! Chen Tian's body suddenly stiffened, and the space in front of him cracked and then disappeared. Everyone looked at Chen Tian, and there was a strand of sword energy in between Chen Tian's eyebrows. He was killed just like that. Everyone was stunned. In the distant endless starry sky, a woman in a plain dress stopped. She tilted her head slightly, and with 2 fingers, she gently held a strand of her hair and said softly, "Did you use it?" The strand of sword energy between Chen Tian's eyebrows suddenly vanished, and then Chen Tian's figure instantly became ethereal. Chen Tian stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "It's only just begun." As soon as he finished speaking, his figure vanished. Everyone in the surroundings instantly heaved sighs of relief when they witnessed this scene. But right at this moment, an explosion suddenly resounded in the sky, and then a man walked out from there. Everyone was stunned when they saw the man. Chen Tian. It's Chen Tian again. The expressions of everyone here instantly became extremely unsightly. Yi Xian's face had turned gloomy as well. Meanwhile, Lian Xian's voice suddenly resounded in his mind. That person from before was only his clone, and this is his clone as well. Yi Xian spoke solemnly. "How many clones does he have?" Lian Xian replied, "This is his second and final clone, and it possesses 30% of his strength, 30% of his strength." Yi Xian fell silent. He clenched his right fist tightly, and no one knew what he was thinking. Chen Tian walked down slowly from midair, and his gaze descended onto Yi Xian. "Do you have any other trump cards?" Yi Xian opened his palm, and another strand of sword energy appeared. Another strand of sword energy. Chen Tian glanced at Yi Xian, and then he suddenly waved his right hand lightly. Something seemed to have been torn open in the distant sky, and it didn't take long for countless strands of black energy to surge out like tidewater. Daoist Mountain Ghost and the others hurriedly retreated when they witnessed this scene. Even though the black energy from before was formidable, they were still barely able to resist it. But now, the amount of black energy wasn't just countless times greater than before, it was countless times stronger as well. Endless black energy spread out from behind Chen Tian, and this black energy spread out in all directions at an extremely fast speed. Chen Tian looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "In the void behind me, there is a space-devouring beast. This beast lives by devouring the power of the space dimension, and it can use it for its own purposes. Of course, this isn't the main point. The main point is that if you choose to kill me, this beast will devour your entire 4-dimensional universe. Make your choice." Yi Xian fell silent. At this moment, Daoist Mountain Ghost suddenly spoke in a deep voice. "Young friend, this black energy has appeared in many places in the 4-dimensional universe. I can't resist it." Yi Xian glanced around, and this time, he looked very far away. This black energy had already appeared in many places. Deity's Templar, Black Yellow Great World, and even the faraway Qingqing. Facing this endless black energy, he saw the despair in many people's eyes. Deities Templars Zhu Xia, Yuan Shaodao, Northern Regions Jianghu, Lian Wanli, Shangguan Xian, everyone could only wait for death. Only the experts here could barely resist it. However, they could only barely resist it. This was because this black gas would devour the entire four-dimensional universe. Yi Xian turned to look at Shao Qi and the other two. Shao Qi shrugged, I'm not afraid of death. It's just a pity that I can't go to the fifth dimension to take a look. And Lanxiu glanced at Yi Xian, but she didn't say anything. Mo smiled slightly, I've tried my best. Actually, I'm also a little regretful. I also want to see what kind of world the fifth dimension is like. Unfortunately, I won't have the chance. Yi Xian shook his head. We have to live well. Everyone has to live well, too. After that, I'll take you to the fifth dimension. As his voice fell, Yi Xian raised his head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. In the depths of the starry sky, he vaguely saw a pair of huge black eyes. After a moment of silence, the sword qi in Yi Xian's hands suddenly soared into the sky. This strand of sword qi directly entered the depths of the starry sky. He chose to kill this space-devouring beast. Ah, in the depths of the starry sky, a mournful scream suddenly rang out. Soon, all the black energy in the surroundings began to slowly disappear. Yi Xian said softly, Did I save the world? In some unknown starry sky, the woman in the plain dress slowly closed her eyes. After a moment, she said softly, Back then, I entered the path of destruction by exterminating all living beings. Now, you use my sword qi to save all living beings. Saying this, she looked into the depths of the starry sky and said softly, What a good karma. Brother, every cause has an effect. You are the only karma that I can't cut off. P.S. When I published it today, I checked it twice. I hope there are no typos. Now, every time I finish writing, I check it more than twice. Chapter 850. Karma. There must be a cause and effect. To the plain-dressed woman, no matter how strong the karma was, it could not touch her. That was because her sword could sever all karma. However, she did not want to sever this karma. She also knew very well that as long as she did not cut off the relationship between her and Yi Xian, she would have a lot of troubles ahead of her. Some troubles could not be solved with a sword. They could even ruin her sword doctrine heart. But she never regretted it. There was only one person who could let her karma touch her. There was only one person who could destroy her sword heart. There was only one person who could make her feel that living was meaningful, invincible. In this life, she did not want to be defeated. Who could defeat her? Longevity? In this life, she did not want to die. Who could kill her? In the starry sky, after the black gas disappeared, Yi Xian looked at Chen Tian. He knew that things were not over yet. What Chen Tian did just now was actually to force him to hand over the sword energy. And he had to hand over the sword energy. He, Yi Xian, was a secular person and a selfish person. He did not have the thought of saving the world and longevity as his responsibility. He simply did not want anything to happen to his friends. And he had many friends and people he cared about. Temple and Zhu Xia, and those people from Black Yellow Great World, Jianghu, Mo Yinqi, Baizhe, Shangguan Xianer, etc. These people were people he cared about. As Jianghu had said, he, Yi Xian, not only had a sister, but he also had many friends and people he cared about. He did not want to be a lonely swordsman. He did not want to be a swordsman who was selfish to his friends. At this moment, Yi Xian's face suddenly turned pale and the aura around him started to become chaotic. He could not suppress it anymore. Just now, he had been suppressing the energy after devouring the sword energy. But now, he could not suppress it anymore. He was about to break through. Yi Xian was about to speak when Shao Qi suddenly said, You break through first. The three of us will stop him. Yi Xian shook his head. Danger, Seven said, I have no choice. You have to break through. If you do, along with your trump cards, you might be able to fight him. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then nodded. He sat down cross-legged and focused on absorbing the energy in his body. Shao Qi and the other two stood in front of Yi Xian. In the distance, Chen Tian looked at Shao Qi and the other two. The three of you are not bad. If you are willing, you can follow me to the multidimensional academy in the fifth dimension to study. Saying this, he smiled faintly. You guys might not know what entering the Myriad Dimensions Academy means. It means that you guys, MOCS suddenly asked, do you have any friends? Chen Tian looked at MOCS, naturally. MOCS smiled and said, will you betray your friend? Chen Tian thought about it, then smiled and said, I won't. MOCS faintly smiled, we won't either. Chen Tian looked at MOCS, you will die. MOCS softly said, a true friend can live and die together. Chen Tian looked at Yi Xian for a long time, then nodded, you are very loyal. However, I want to see if you are really loyal. Saying this, he suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in front of MOCS. Before MOCS could react, Chen Tian's hand was already on his throat. At this moment, a sword stopped behind Chen Tian. The moment Chen Tian made his move, Seven also made his move. However, she was still too slow. This doppelganger was much stronger than the previous one. Chen Tian looked at MOCS in his hand and started to exert force. Soon, MOCS's body became illusory. Chen Tian smiled and said, you should know that I will really kill you. I am not joking with you. However, I still want to give you a chance. As long as you nod and are willing to go to the fifth dimension with me, I can let you live. MOCS looked at Chen Tian and smiled, I want to go to the fifth dimension to take a look. However, I don't want to kneel there. Chen Tian's hand started to exert force and a mysterious force suddenly surged into MOCS's body. Ah! MOCS suddenly raised his head and roared. At this moment, his pupils actually exploded. Not only that, the bones in his body also started to slowly crack. At this moment, Seven no longer hesitated and directly slashed at Chen Tian. Chen Tian didn't even turn his head and waved his hand. Boom! A powerful force instantly sent Seven flying. At this moment, a long spear suddenly stabbed down from the top of his head. Chen Tian's right foot lightly stomped. Boom! The space above his head suddenly collapsed and the powerful force directly sent Anlancio flying. Chen Tian continued to look at MOCS. It isn't easy for people to live, especially for geniuses like you. It is even more difficult for you to reach this stage. You have to think carefully. Is it really worth it to sacrifice your life for a so-called brother? MOCS clenched his fists and his facial features twisted. On his forehead, veins popped out and he looked incomparably malevolent. Pain. At this moment, he was enduring an unbearable torture. Chen Tian stared at MOCS. As long as you say the word, you can live. Not only can you live, you can live even better. MOCS suddenly roared, Brother Yi, take good care of my clansmen. As his voice faded, his body suddenly started burning. Burning his soul to self-destruct. Chen Tian narrowed his eyes. At this moment, a voice came from the side, let him go. Chen Tian turned to look at the nearby Yi Xian. Yi Xian stared deadly at Chen Tian. He opened his palm and the prison pagoda appeared in his hand, let him go, this is for you. Chen Tian laughed, even if you don't give it to me, I can take it. Yi Xian said, you should know that it has already recognized me as its master. If my brother dies, I will detonate it. I will do what I say. Chen Tian looked at Yi Xian, but he didn't say anything. At this moment, MOCS was completely burning. At most a few breaths of time, he would completely disappear. Yi Xian suddenly roared. The prison pagoda appeared between his eyebrows. In the next moment, the prison pagoda started shaking. Seeing this, Chen Tian squinted his eyes. His right hand lightly exerted strength, and a force shattered the flames around Wuxia. However, he was still a bit too slow. At this moment, Wuxia's body completely disappeared, leaving only his soul. Moreover, this soul was extremely ethereal, as if it could disappear at any moment. Chen Tian looked at Yi Xian. "Give it to me." Yi Xian stared deadly at Chen Tian. With a point of his finger, the prison pagoda flew right in front of Chen Tian. Chen Tian let go. The moment he let go of Wuxia, his pupils suddenly shrank. He saw Yi Xian suddenly roar, "Old dog, my brother isn't someone you can touch." As his voice faded, a sword aura suddenly flew out of his hand. Sword aura again. Yi Xian originally didn't want to use this sword aura because it truly was his last trump card. He wanted to save it for a critical moment, but now, seeing Wuxia's body destroyed, he didn't want to think about anything else. Seeing this, Chen Tian's expression changed greatly. He frantically retreated, but the sword aura was even faster, instantly piercing through his forehead. Qi. Chen Tian's body instantly became ethereal. Chen Tian looked at Yi Xian. He was just about to speak when a sword suddenly flew out of Yi Xian's hand. This flying sword sliced through Chen Tian's throat. Chen Tian instantly disappeared. At this moment, Yi Xian's mouth spat out a mouthful of essence blood. Just now, he was at a critical moment, but seeing Wuxia almost be forced to burn her soul and self-destruct, he had to forcefully stop. Now, he was starting to suffer the backlash. Yi Xian didn't care about his body. He looked at Wuxia. Right now, Wuxia's body was extremely ethereal, as if it could disappear at any moment. At this moment, Little Soul's voice suddenly rang out, "Young master, I can save him." Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Hurry." As he spoke, he quickly took out the soul-suppressing sword. Little Soul directly absorbed Wuxia into the sword. Little Soul said, "His soul is very weak. It will take a period of time to recover." Yi Xian breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. He looked up at the horizon. "Brother Mo, don't worry. I will take you to the 5th dimension. Let's go there together." After saying that, he immediately sat down cross-legged. Breakthrough. He had to break through as soon as possible because he knew that things weren't over yet. Everyone present knew that things weren't over yet. Although the 5th dimension barrier had been broken, at the end of their line of sight was pitch black. In that pitch black space, everyone could feel a powerful force. A force from the 5th dimension. And Lanxiu and Shaoqi walked to Yi Xian's side. Shaoqi looked up at the depths of the starry sky and softly said, "Perhaps, the 5th dimension barrier isn't a bad thing." The 4th dimension was naturally much weaker than the 5th dimension. Under such circumstances, if the two universes didn't have any restrictions, the 4th dimension would really be slaughtered by others. Just like just now, if it weren't for Yi Xian's sword light, the 4th dimension would probably have been destroyed in a day. But now that the restrictions were gone, the fate of the 4th dimension was in the hands of the experts of the 5th dimension. At this time, not far away, a middle-aged man suddenly said, "I'll try." As he spoke, he suddenly soared into the sky. Obviously, he still wanted to go to the 5th dimension. This was also normal. After all, the restrictions had been broken and the 5th dimension was close at hand. How could he not be tempted? However, before he could approach that area, a white light directly blasted his body. Boom! The middle-aged man's body directly turned to ashes. Seeing this scene, everyone's expression immediately sank. The people of the 5th dimension didn't want the experts of the 4th dimension to go up. Everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's aura was getting stronger and stronger. A breakthrough was imminent. At this time, Lian Xian suddenly appeared beside Yi Xian. She glanced at the people present and then raised her head to look at the depths of the starry sky. She frowned slightly. After a while, Lian Xian looked at Yi Xian. She just looked at Yi Xian silently. At this time, Shaoqi walked to Lian Xian's side and softly said, "What's wrong?" Lian Xian shook her head. Originally, I hoped that he would become stronger before going to the fifth dimension. Unfortunately, I didn't expect that the people above wouldn't give him any chance. As she spoke, she shook her head again. He won't survive. It can be said that he is now the public enemy of the fifth dimension. The people of the fourth dimension only know that Xiao Ta can go to the fifth dimension. They don't know the real use of this pagoda. But the people of the fifth dimension know the real use of this pagoda. For this pagoda, they will risk their lives. Xiao Qi was silent. At this time, Lian Xian said again, if I'm not wrong, they might have already made a move on that plain-dressed woman. Because this time, not a single expert from the Myriad Dimensions Academy came. They must be targeting that plain-dressed woman. Chapter 851. Against the plain-dressed woman. Why were the experts of the fifth dimension unable to obtain the World Prison Pagoda? The reason was because of the plain-dressed woman. She was the one who had been obstructing the experts of the fifth dimension. Without her, Yi Xian would not have been able to live until now. It could be said that the plain-dressed woman was their greatest enemy. And they were very clear that this woman was not easy to kill because they had already failed once. On the battlefield, Lian Xian's expression was gloomy the entire time. Xiao Qi and the rest simply did not know the situation of the fifth dimension. The people of that universe could not be compared to the people of the fourth dimension. Especially the Myriad Dimensions Academy. In the past, the Myriad Dimensions Academy could be said to be the most powerful force in the entire fifth dimension. Naturally, the members of the Myriad Dimensions Academy were all students and did not participate in worldly affairs. Because of this, the status of the Myriad Dimensions Academy in the fifth dimension was very high. She knew that the plain-dressed woman was very strong, but the Myriad Dimensions Academy was not weak either. Especially Chen Tian and that female teacher. Their strength could only be described as unfathomable. Lian Xian looked at Yi Xian with worry in her eyes. She naturally did not want anything to happen to Yi Xian. Her goal was to find her master, and this World Prison Pagoda was the key to finding her master. And if this World Prison Pagoda fell into Chen Tian's hands, would Chen Tian go and find her master? If it was a long time ago, he might have. But now, she was very clear that Chen Tian definitely would not, because power was very tempting. Chen Tian was now the master of the Myriad Dimensions Academy, so he would not go and find his master. Moreover, if the World Prison Pagoda fell into Chen Tian's hands, the two sisters would once again be imprisoned in the pagoda. This was because Chen Tian would definitely not give up on their Dao laws. If they gathered their Dao laws, their might would be extremely terrifying. One must know that in the past, when the two sisters joined forces with the World Prison Pagoda, they fought against the three swordsmen. Although they lost, it was not because they and the World Prison Pagoda were weak, but because the three swordsmen were too strong. Therefore, if the World Prison Pagoda fell into Chen Tian's hands, it would be difficult for them to escape their fate. When they had followed the Prophet had never treated them as subordinates, but if they fell into the hands of Chen Tian, thinking of this, Lian Xian opened her palm and the World Prison Pagoda suddenly appeared in her palm. Lian Xian looked at Yi Xian beside her. I'll buy you some time. Not much, maybe 2 or 3 months. As her voice fell, Lian Xian suddenly transformed into a beam of white light and shot up into the sky. Very quickly, she arrived in front of the black region. She looked at the black region in front of her, then at the World Prison Pagoda in her hands. She slowly closed her eyes. Haven't you always been curious about what Dao Law I am? Below, Yi Xian raised his head and looked at Lian Xian. The corners of Lian Xian's mouth lifted slightly. You'll know soon enough. With that, she suddenly opened her eyes. In the name of the pagoda, seal. The World Prison Pagoda in her hands trembled violently. In the next moment, countless golden runes suddenly flew out of Lian Xian's body. Very quickly, these golden runes were like tiny butterflies that flew towards the black region. Soon, these golden runes formed a swastika character. And at this moment, a giant finger suddenly descended from the black region. This giant finger directly bombarded the swastika character. Boom! The swastika character trembled violently, but it did not shatter. On the contrary, the giant finger directly exploded. However, behind this giant finger, a giant black hand suddenly stretched out. Below, Lian Qian slowly closed her eyes. Seal the heavens and earth. As her voice fell, she suddenly opened her eyes. From within her body, a golden pillar of light suddenly shot up into the sky. This golden pillar of light directly entered the swastika character. The swastika character trembled violently and directly imprinted itself into the black region. Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From this moment onwards, Yi Xian's position as crown prince is removed. Yi Lang will succeed him. The one who spoke was an old man dressed in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. And on both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a somewhat timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone looked over and saw a little girl standing at the door. The little girl was about 12 or 13 years old. Her two small hands were tightly gripping the corners of her skirt. Her face was sickly pale and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of timidity in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling. She was Yi Xian's younger sister. This time, when she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a crown prince. Why did you remove his title for no reason? The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the great elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting with his life on the line for the clan. It is unknown whether he is alive or dead. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to remove his title. This is really unfair. Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. Whether he is removed or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this moment, the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The great elder said coldly, then flog 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he is fighting with his life on the line for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to show off. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of crown prince. What are you yelling about? With that, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp sound of the slap was heard. The right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She just covered her cheek with her hand. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. I'm Jianghu. Greetings, Crown Prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the Crown Prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply. I'm willing to go through fire and water for the Crown Prince. Yi Lang nodded slightly. Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show any mercy. Do you understand? Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu suddenly stopped when he saw something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking toward the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. This young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged at Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man." "How dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and said, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian ignored Jianghu and walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be removed, and Yi Lang shall take over. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the elders of the Yi clan. "Why?" At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a hint of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you remove him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, why are you interrupting? Leave." Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look directly at the great elder. However, she did not leave, and instead mustered up her courage to enter the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and his life is uncertain. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to remove him from his position. This is really unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he is removed or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning." The great elder coldly replied, "Then flog 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang is the heir, and it is the wish of everyone. What are you shouting about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled. What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Jianghu greets the prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, even if it means death. Yi Lang nodded. Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show mercy, understand? Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu seemed to see something, and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there, and charged towards Jianghu once more. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him, and snarled, your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage, and in the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu, and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Chapter 852. I beg you to be stronger. Hearing the woman's words, the smile on Chen Tian's face suddenly disappeared. The woman was arrogant? Arrogant? Supercilious? Possibly both, but his intuition told him that the woman in front of him was a bit stronger than they had expected. Of course, at this moment, he had no way of retreating. Moreover, there was no need for him to do so. All these years, what had Chen Tian not seen before? How could he retreat just because of one sentence from the woman in front of him? Of course, facing the woman in front of him, he was even more cautious. At this time, the woman in the distance suddenly said, Start your performance? Chen Tian looked at the woman in the plain dress. The woman in the plain dress had a calm expression. In her limpid eyes, there was not a trace of ripple. This was a special person. Chen Tian chuckled. To be honest, you surprised many of us because we never thought that a strong person like you would appear in the four-dimensional universe. The woman in the plain dress looked at Chen Tian. As a person from the five-dimensional universe, do you have a sense of superiority? Chen Tian laughed. No, because we never compare ourselves with you four-dimensional people. Speaking up to here, he suddenly paused and then said, Speaking of which, it seems that we do have a sense of superiority. However, isn't this normal? For example, when you face a race that is more backward than you, don't you also have a sense of superiority? The woman in the plain dress said, superiority comes from inferiority. Finding a sense of superiority from those who are weaker than you is incompetent. Chen Tian looked at the woman in the plain dress. In front of me, don't you also have a sense of superiority? What, do you also have inferiority and are incompetent? The corner of the woman's mouth slightly raised. Superiority? Have you ever seen a person have a sense of superiority when facing an ant? Hearing this, Chen Tian narrowed his eyes. Ant. The woman in the plain dress in front of him actually treated him as an ant. Chen Tian laughed. He laughed somewhat crazily. In this life, no one has ever said that I am as weak as an ant. You are the first. The plain-dressed woman slowly walked towards Chen Tian. If you don't start your performance, then you will lose this chance. Chen Tian looked at the plain-dressed woman and said with a smile, come, let me see exactly how strong you are. As soon as he finished speaking, his palms suddenly opened, and a thick ancient book suddenly appeared in his hand. Chen Tian looked at the woman in the plain dress and smiled, do you dare to enter the book and fight with us? The woman in the plain dress looked at the ancient book. The title of the book was, Book Realm. The plainly dressed woman nodded, all right. As soon as she finished speaking, she transformed into a ray of sword light and entered the book. The Book Realm. Chen Tian smiled faintly and entered the world of books. The woman in the plain dress appeared in a huge study room. As far as the eye could see, it was densely packed with bookshelves, with no end in sight. At this moment, Chen Tian appeared not too far away from the woman in the plain dress. He looked at the woman in the plain dress and smiled, book realm, with books as the boundary. This was created by teacher many years ago, and it can be used to suppress another's realm through books. Moreover, within this world, all divine arts can't be used. As soon as he finished speaking, the books on the surrounding bookshelves suddenly flipped open page by page. Subsequently, countless tiny words flew out from the books, and these words directly arrived above the woman in the plain dress. Subsequently, a mysterious force directly enveloped the woman in the plain dress. Suppress one's realm. However, the woman in the plain dress's expression was extremely calm. Realm? That was a set of rules that she had once set, and she was no longer within the scope of the rules. To put it simply, she had already jumped out of the scope of realm. At this moment, 4 old men suddenly appeared around the woman in the plain dress. The 4 old men were all dressed in white robes, and each of them held a thick black ancient book in their hands. The 4 of them stared at the woman in the plain dress, and they incessantly muttered something. Very soon, the black ancient book in their hands suddenly flipped open, and blood-red words flew out from the book. These words were like 4 threads that converged towards the woman in the plain dress from 4 directions. These words contained an extremely powerful force, and it could be said that if these words appeared in the outside world, they could easily destroy a piece of the starry sky. And at this moment, these words were endless. This time, the Myriad Dimensional Academy was serious. They didn't dare to be careless. After all, they had already failed before. Therefore, they were extremely cautious towards the woman in the plain dress. However, these words stopped half a zhang away from the woman in the plain dress. Seeing this scene, Chen Tian, who was not far away, narrowed his eyes, and the 4 old men's expressions became even more solemn. At this moment, Chen Tian suddenly said, kill. As soon as he said that, the space around the woman in the plain dress suddenly split open, and then 4 black chains formed by countless black words tore through the air. At the top of these 4 chains were 4 extremely hideous demon beasts. These demon beasts were shaped like wolves, and they had extremely long fangs. Their eyes were blood red, and they looked like they were about to devour someone. The woman in the plain dress glanced at the 4 demon beasts and shook her head. There was unconcealable disappointment in her eyes. You're wasting my time. As soon as she finished speaking, she lightly snapped her fingers. A ray of sword light appeared. Chi 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 chi, the 4 demon beasts directly stopped on the spot. Very soon, the 4 demon beasts became illusory and disappeared. At the same time, the eyes of the 4 old men nearby were wide open. There was fear in their eyes, and there was a sword mark on their throats. Instant kill. Not far away, Chen Tian stared at the woman in the plain dress. At this moment, his fists were already clenched tightly. The woman in the plain dress looked around and said softly, "This so-called book realm is barely passable. At least, Master's idea is very interesting. As for power..." At this point, she looked at Chen Tian. "You want to use this thing to kill me? May I ask, are you retarded?" Chen Tian suddenly smiled. "Don't worry, there's more." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly formed a seal with both hands, and a moment later, he suddenly roared. "Destroy!" Boom! A bookshelf suddenly exploded behind Chen Tian, and then a dark red "Destroy" character floated out. The moment this "Destroy" character appeared, the entire book realm actually trembled slightly. It was too powerful. The woman in the plain dress looked at the "Destroy" character. At this moment, Chen Tian suddenly roared. "Go!" However, the "Destroy" character only trembled and did not move. Chen Tian was stunned. What's going on? At this moment, the woman in the plain dress suddenly said, "Come here." The "Destroy" character hesitated for a moment before it directly floated to the woman in the plain dress. It was trembling. Fear. Seeing this scene, Chen Tian's hands began to tremble. The woman in the plain dress glanced at the "Destroy" character in front of her. A character has cultivated a spirit, and it is an extreme destruction spirit. This is rare. I will find a new master for you, how about it? The "Destroy" character trembled slightly. It moved. The woman in the plain dress was expressionless. Not willing? The "Destroy" character suddenly trembled violently. The woman in the plain dress nodded. It's good that you are willing. Follow him well, and in the future, I will give you a good fortune. After saying that, she directly kept the "Destroy" character. Then, she looked at Chen Tian. Are there any other treasures? Chen Tian stared at the woman in the plain dress. Why? The woman in the plain dress said, "You mean this character has a spirit?" Chen Tian said, "Yes." The woman in the plain dress smiled. Because it is smarter than you. As she said that, she suddenly looked behind Chen Tian to the right. She slightly frowned, and with a point of her finger, a ray of sword light directly slashed at the bookshelf. Boom! A powerful force burst forth from the bookshelf. Soon, a golden word, "break," floated out. The woman in the plain dress looked at the golden "Destroy" character and said, "Come here." The "Destroy" character trembled slightly, but it did not go over. The woman in the plain dress squinted her eyes, and a ray of sword light flew out from her eyes. In the distance, the "Destroy" character directly exploded and turned into ashes. Seeing this scene, Chen Tian, who was not far away, had a face full of shock. As for the woman in the plain dress, the blood-red "Destroy" character in her hand, it was trembling in fear. The woman in the plain dress looked at Chen Tian, and Chen Tian's body gradually became illusory. Doppelganger. This was also his doppelganger. His main body did not come down, and he did not dare to come down, because his main body still needed to guard the Myriad Dimensions Academy. The woman in the plain dress suddenly said, "Originally, the life and death of this four-dimensional universe had nothing to do with me. However, since my brother chose to save this four-dimensional universe, then," as she said that, she walked in front of Chen Tian and looked at Chen Tian. "From now on, this four-dimensional universe is under my protection. Go back and tell the people of the fifth dimension that you can come at me. If you use 2 moves, it will be my loss." After saying that, she disappeared, and the book realm disappeared together with her. In the battlefield, Chen Tian was silent, and his body became more and more illusory. He knew that they had seriously underestimated the woman's strength. But here came the question. Just how strong was she? Even the book realm left by his teacher could not do anything to this woman. How strong was she? There was no answer. Soon, Chen Tian completely disappeared. In the starry sky, the woman in the plain dress looked at the thick book realm in her hand. Find him and follow him. In the future, I will give you a fortune. The book realm slightly trembled, then turned into a ray of black light and disappeared into the horizon. Looking at the book realm at the end of the starry sky, the woman in the plain dress was silent for a moment, then she turned and left. In the starry sky, the woman in the plain dress slowly walked. Her figure became smaller and smaller at the end of the starry sky, looking somewhat lonely. In a certain academy, in a pavilion, a middle-aged man suddenly opened his eyes. Chen Tian. It was not a doppelganger, but his main body. Chen Tian got up and walked to the side. He lowered his head and looked at the pool in front of him. After a moment, he smiled. Do you think I'm scared? Even my teacher didn't dare to call himself invincible in the past. What ability do you have? As he said that, he slowly closed his eyes. Don't you want to fight? Then I will have a good fight with you. Pass down the order to arrest Yi Xian. Chapter 853. The Four-Dimensional Universe. After Yi Xian left the dual realm sky, he returned to the northern region. Yi Xian immediately went to the Mok clan. The Mok clan had now moved to Tianjiang City. They had their own territory in Tianjiang City. The Mok clan was developing well and was considered a tyrant in Tianjiang City. Seeing Yi Xian, the great elder of the Mok clan quickly came out and bowed. King Yi. Yi Xian said softly, Senior, you don't have to be so polite. Take me to a quiet place. The great elder nodded. Follow me, King Yi. Soon, the great elder brought Yi Xian to a hall in the Mok clan. There was only Yi Xian and him in the hall. Yi Xian opened his palm and the soul-suppressing sword appeared in his hand. The soul-suppressing sword trembled slightly and Mo's soul floated out. At this moment, Mo's soul had condensed a lot and was much stronger than before. Seeing Yi Xian, Mo smiled. Did you win? Yi Xian nodded. For the time being. Mo said softly, for the time being. Yi Xian said, Brother Mo, don't worry about this for now. Your priority now is to rebuild your body as soon as possible. Mo nodded. All right. Be careful. Yi Xian patted Mo's shoulder lightly and turned to leave. After Yi Xian left, the great elder said in a deep voice, It's very serious, right? Mo nodded. The great elder hesitated for a moment and said, You are the hope of our clan. Mo said softly, I know. But sometimes, there are many things that have to be done. Saying this, he looked at the great elder. Uncle, I know what you are thinking. But have you ever thought about the reason why our Mok clan could come this far? The great elder said, Because of King Yi. Mo nodded, the reason our clansmen have a place to live is because of Brother Yi. As for us, we shouldn't only think about our own benefits. If Brother Yi falls, when the nest is overturned, how can the eggs remain intact? The grand elder shook his head. Uncle, I was being selfish. Mo nodded slightly and said softly, This time, my physical body being destroyed is not entirely a bad thing. The great elder hurriedly said, What's wrong? Mo slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, a shadow suddenly appeared above his soul. Seeing this scene, the grand elder was stunned for a moment before saying in shock, This is the ancestor. After Yi Xian left the Mok clan, he returned to Tianjiang City. In a large hall, Yi Xian gathered the experts of the Black-Yellow Great World. The Xianyuan clan patriarch, the Black-Yellow master, and the others were all present. Yi Xian looked at the crowd. I believe everyone has heard about the dual realm sky. That's right, now that the fifth dimension's restriction has been lifted, people from the fourth dimension can go to the fifth dimension, and experts from the fifth dimension should be able to come to the fourth dimension. Hearing this, the people present were a little excited. The fifth dimension. Not only did the experts from the dual realm sky want to go to the fifth dimension, but the experts from the black-yellow great world also wanted to go to the fifth dimension. That was a whole new universe. Yi Xian glanced at the crowd. Everyone, it is best to temporarily give up on the idea of going to the fifth dimension because they are not friendly. The crowd was silent. Yi Xian said again, the fifth dimension is not friendly. At this moment, the black-yellow master suddenly said, King Yi, was the black gas from before caused by the fifth dimension? Yi Xian nodded. Hearing this, the black-yellow master's face darkened. Do they want to destroy our fourth dimension? Yi Xian said in a low voice, they did have this idea before. The black-yellow master looked at Yi Xian. King Yi, did you stop them? Yi Xian nodded. The black-yellow master looked deeply at Yi Xian. King Ye's strength is unfathomable. The crowd also looked at Yi Xian. They had to admit that the current Yi Xian was becoming more and more unfathomable. Yi Xian said, today, I called everyone here to tell you about the current situation between our fourth dimension and the fifth dimension. I believe everyone knows that the strength of our fourth dimension is definitely weaker than that of the fifth dimension. Therefore, now that the fifth dimension's restriction has been lifted, it is not a good thing for us. Also, I hope that everyone can understand one thing. Don't even think about going to the fifth dimension. If you go now, you will be sending yourself to death. Of course, if anyone wants to go, I won't stop you. He knew that going to the fifth dimension was an irresistible temptation for many people. If he forcefully stopped them, some people might think that he was obstructing their future. No one in the hall spoke. Yi Xian continued, now that the fifth dimension's restriction has been lifted, the experts of the fifth dimension may enter the fourth dimension at any time. Therefore, our current situation is not particularly good. Especially now, the people of the black-yellow great world may be unstable. At this time, we need everyone to work together to stabilize the situation. We can't be the first to panic before others come. The black-yellow master nodded. What King Yi said makes sense. We can't be the first to panic. Yi Xian said, we will be very busy from now on. Everyone, please leave. The crowd in the hall bowed slightly to Yi Xian and then left. However, the black-yellow master did not leave. The black-yellow master walked in front of Yi Xian and looked at Yi Xian. If they really want to destroy our fourth dimension, will we be able to resist? Yi Xian was silent. This was because he could not answer this question. Right now, he was only facing the Myriad Dimensions Academy. However, he was very clear that the Myriad Dimensions Academy was not the only one in the fifth dimension. There were definitely countless other forces, and these forces were very likely to become his enemies. Yi Xian said softly, I don't know. However, don't worry. If they only target me, Yi Xian, Yi Xian, will bear all the consequences. I will not implicate the fourth dimension. The black-yellow master was silent. She could see things further. She knew that there was only one possibility for the fifth dimension to not plunder or conquer the fifth dimension. They had come for the treasure of the fifth dimension. Simply put, the target of the experts of the fifth dimension should be Yi Xian, not the entire fourth dimension. Of course, she did not know that if not for Yi Xian being in the fourth dimension, the fourth dimension would have long ceased to exist. After a while, the black-yellow master left. In the palace, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Breakthrough. After he had swallowed Chen Tian's sword, he had already absorbed the entire sword's power. He did not know what sword it was, but he had to say that it was really a great supplement. Now, he needed some time to comprehend it. What was life-breaking? In the palace, Yi Xian was deep in thought. Outside the palace, in a certain courtyard, there were two women sitting in front of a stone table. They were in Lanxiu and Shaoqi. Beside them, there was a woman leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. She had a blade of grass in her mouth. Lian Wanli. Now, the most monstrous geniuses of the northern region's younger generation, other than Mo Xia and Yi Xian, were all here. Xiao Qi picked up the teacup on the stone table and took a sip. Then, she said, "What do you think?" And Lanxiu did not speak. Lian Wanli shrugged his shoulders. "I can. What do you think?" "Those fellows from the fifth dimension obviously want little Ye's life." And Lanxiu nodded. "Not only do they want to seize the treasure, they want to kill him." Xiao Qi placed down the teacup and said softly, "I think that we can't just sit there and wait for death." At the side, Lian Wanli's brows rose up. "You want to counterattack?" Xiao Qi said indifferently, "Why not?" And Lanxiu suddenly said, "Sure." Xiao Qi glanced in the direction of Yi Xian's room. "He has quite a lot of fortuitous encounters and is getting stronger and stronger. If we follow by his side, the gap between us will get bigger and bigger. I don't want to look up to him in the future." As she spoke, she looked at Lian Wanli and Lanxiu. "Let's go." The corners of Lian Wanli's mouth curled up. "That is exactly what I want." Xiao Qi looked at Lanxiu. And Lanxiu said, "Sure." Xiao Qi said, "Let's go." Lian Wanli suddenly said, "Do you want to say goodbye?" Xiao Qi said indifferently, "There is no need. Let's go." As soon as she finished speaking, she walked towards the distance. And Lanxiu glanced in the direction of Yi Xian and then followed. Lian Wanli shrugged. "Let's go then." Very quickly, the three girls vanished into the distance. They left in a carefree manner and didn't bid farewell to anyone. On the city wall, Shengguan Xian, and Jiang Jiao looked at the three girls who vanished into the horizon. Jiang Jiao said softly, "I envy them." Shengguan Xian nodded. The talents of Xiao Qi and the other two weren't weaker than Yi Xian at all. Before this, they had always been by Yi Xian's side. It could be said that their light was overshadowed by Yi Xian. If one disregarded Yi Xian, one would realize that they were actually very outstanding. Now, the three of them decided to go on their own. Obviously, they didn't want to be affected by Yi Xian anymore. Contrast. Simply speaking, the three of them didn't want to be Yi Xian's contrast. At this time, Jiang Jiao chuckled. "They can leave, but we can't, and we don't dare to leave." Now, the northern region needed her and Shengguan Xian, very much. Because the entire black-yellow Great World's affairs were handled by her and Shengguan Xian, and Yi Xian was completely a hands-off shopkeeper. If they left, Yi Xian would definitely be badly battered. Moreover, the two of them didn't have the strength of Xiao Qi and the other two. If they left the black-yellow Great World, it would be very dangerous, not to mention going to the fifth dimension. At this time, Shengguan Xian, suddenly said, "Do you want to go to the fifth dimension to have a look?" Jiang Jiao smiled. "Of course. The fifth dimension." As she spoke, she looked up at the end of the horizon and said softly, "I don't know if I have the chance to go in this life." Shengguan Xian was about to speak, but at this moment, the two girls suddenly disappeared. Soon, the two girls appeared in front of a large hall. And in front of the hall stood a man. It was Yi Xian. Jiang Jiao quickly walked in front of Yi Xian and said softly, "You broke through?" Yi Xian shook his head. This time, he wasn't able to break through to the life-breaking realm. "Just a little bit more." Jiang Jiao nodded slightly. "No rush, take your time." Yi Xian said softly, "I'm going out for a while. I'll have to trouble you here." Jiang Jiao looked at Yi Xian. "Where are you going?" Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. "To find help." After saying that, he directly turned into a sword light and disappeared at the end of the horizon. In the same place, Jiang Jiao said softly, "Say, who do you think he's going to find?" P.S. Recently, the weather has been getting colder and colder. If you're not careful, you'll catch a cold. Brothers, make sure to keep warm. Chapter 854. Yi Xian entered the vast starry sky. He rode on his sword, and the sword light streaked across the starry sky like a shooting star. Yi Xian closed his eyes and sank into deep thought. The removal of the fifth dimension restriction meant that he would now have to face the fifth dimension. Although his strength had greatly increased, he was now facing a peak expert of the fifth dimension. Chen Tian. At this moment, he thought of Chen Tian's strength. The other party was only a clone, yet it could crush him, Shao Qi, and the others. What if the main body was here? As he thought of this, Yi Xian slowly clenched his fists. As long as there was life, there would be no battle. Fight! Yi Xian opened his eyes and looked at the distant starry sky. He knew that if he wanted peace, he could only fight. This was his only choice. During his time in Qingsheng, he had understood one thing. When facing an enemy, don't think about begging them for pity. This was because the more you did this, the more they would look down on you and bully you. There was only one way to make the other party not dare to bully you. Fight. If your fist was hard enough, the other party would not dare to bully you. At this moment, he thought of his fate. Was everything that had happened to him since he arrived in Qingsheng his fate? Did he believe in fate? Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Fate. Ordinary people said that one's fate was in their own hands and not in the hands of the heavens. He also said that his fate was in his own hands and not in the hands of the heavens. However, it was often in the hands of fate. For example, if Yi Ling had left. At that time, what could he have done? He could not have done anything. For example, when facing Chen Tian and the space-devouring beast, if not for the 3 rays of sword chi from the plainly dressed woman, what could he have done? What could he have done? Yi Xian faced his heart. The answer was that he could not do anything and could only wait for death. My fate is in my own hands and not in the hands of the heavens. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Now that he thought about it, this sentence was so ironic. How many people in this world could truly control their own fate? Could he do it now? The answer was no. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Control of one's own fate? To him, it was still a joke. Of course, he understood very well that even though he couldn't control his own destiny now, he had to work hard to fight for it and not resign himself to fate. No matter how unfair one's fate was, one must never resign to it. He could not resign himself to fate. When he thought up to here, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. In the next moment, a powerful aura suddenly swept out from his body, and the surrounding space instantly rippled like water. The aura around Yi Xian grew stronger and stronger. About an hour later, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Boom! The space within a radius of several thousand zhang suddenly trembled violently. Yi Xian looked at his right hand. He slowly clenched it, and a powerful force gathered in his hand. Life destruction. He didn't expect that he would reach the fate-breaking state in this place. Life destruction. Yi Xian looked up into the depths of space. What was Fate Breaker? Only now did he understand that the so-called Fate Breaker wasn't about breaking through fate, but about seeing through fate. Perhaps one's birth was not good, but that birth did not mean one's entire life. If one worked hard, one could still change one's fate. When he thought of this, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Interesting realms. He didn't know who had created these realms, but he had to admit that they were all very interesting. Now, he was a little curious about the legendary Dao Destruction realm. Dao Destruction? How was it destroyed? Now, this chapter is not over. Please continue. He became even more curious. A moment later, Yi Xian disappeared. About 2 hours later, Yi Xian arrived in a starry sky. The Nether Palace. Yi Xian arrived before the Nether Palace and looked at the statues inside. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before saying, "Is anyone there?" No one responded. Yi Xian asked again, "Is anyone there?" Still no response. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before activating his bloodline. His bloodline started to boil, but there was still no response. Yi Xian hurriedly suppressed the blood in his body. He didn't dare to release his bloodline because he couldn't control it. Yi Xian glanced at the statues, bowed slightly, and left. In front of the palace, Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before saying softly, "I can only rely on myself." With that, he turned into a sword light and disappeared into the vast horizon. As soon as Yi Xian left, a statue in the palace suddenly shattered. Hee, a voice rang out from within the palace. After leaving the Nether Palace, Yi Xian didn't return to the dual realm sky. Instead, he returned to the prison pagoda. Yi Xian arrived at the top of the pagoda. Sword Venerate was still sitting below the sword. Yi Xian glanced at Sword Venerate. Sword Venerate had been sitting before the sword for a very long time. He had already entered a meditative state. Sword Venerate must have comprehended something. As for how much he could comprehend, it would depend on his luck. Yi Xian looked at the three swords. The pinnacle of swordsmanship? If there was a pinnacle of swordsmanship, then these three swords represented the pinnacle of swordsmanship. How far was his swordsmanship from that of the masters of these three swords? There was no answer. Yi Xian shook his head and left. He went to Xiaoling's alchemy room. Xiaoling was still fiddling with elixirs. Because of Xiaoling many people in the northern region had reached the Earth's celestial stage. It could be said that Xiaoling had improved the overall strength of the northern region. Seeing Yi Xian, Xiaoling ran up to him. Her little face was still stained with a lot of black dust. Yi Xian gently wiped the dust off Xiaoling's face and said with a smile, "Don't tire yourself too much, okay?" Xiaoling blinked. "Elixirs. Help you." Yi Xian felt warm in his heart. "I know, but in my heart, you are more important than elixirs, okay?" Xiaoling hesitated and said softly, "I." As she spoke, she lowered her head. Yi Xian said with a smile, "What's wrong?" Xiaoling looked up at Yi Xian. "I can help you." Yi Xian smiled. "I know. You have helped me a lot." Xiaoling wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Yi Xian touched Xiaoling's little head gently. "What do you want to say?" Xiaoling shook her head. "Nothing." Yi Xian nodded. "Anyway, if there is anything, you must tell me, okay?" Xiaoling nodded. "Okay." Yi Xian smiled and then left the alchemy room. After Yi Xian left, Xiaoling took out the alchemy scripture and flipped to the last page. There were two big words on it: Godly Shumi Pill. After a while, Xiaoling returned and walked towards the alchemy furnace. She clenched her fists and her eyes were full of determination. "I must refine it. If I don't succeed, I will die." After Yi Xian left the alchemy room, he came to the entrance of the 9th floor. The door of the 9th floor was different from the other floors. There was a blood-red talisman on the door. Yi Xian glanced at the talisman, then turned and left. He said nothing. "This chapter is not finished, please continue." Because he knew that his strength was not equal to the other party, there was no point in saying anything. He had to take responsibility for this matter himself. After leaving the World Prison Pagoda, Yi Xian arrived at the Dual Realm Sky. As soon as he arrived, the space in front of him suddenly split open, followed by a thick book flying out. Yi Xian was stunned. The executing heaven sword suddenly appeared in his hand. He was about to attack, but at this time, the thick black book suddenly circled around him, then slowly floated in front of him. Yi Xian was about to speak, but the thick book directly turned into a black light and disappeared between his eyebrows. Yi Xian was stunned. "What the hell is this?" At this time, Lian Xian suddenly appeared in front of him, staring fixedly at Yi Xian. "This is impossible." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Miss Lian Xian, what do you mean?" Lian Xian said, "See if you can control that ancient book just now." Yi Xian hesitated, then nodded. He sank his consciousness into his body, and soon, a black ancient book suddenly appeared in front of him. Seeing this thick ancient book, Lian Xian's expression became even more solemn. Yi Xian was puzzled. "Miss Lian Xian, this is?" Lian Xian looked at Yi Xian, book realm. Yi Xian frowned slightly, book realm? Lian Xian nodded. Using books as a boundary. Back then, Master used a book to develop a world. This book is a world of its own. There are many forbidden ancient books, rune incantations, and some extremely powerful word spirits. Especially these word spirits, they are condensed from all kinds of forbidden techniques and are extremely powerful. Saying this, she looked at Yi Xian. Among all the treasures of the Myriad Dimensions Academy, this book can be ranked in the top 3. I don't know why it appeared here, and why it directly recognized you as its master. Yi Xian was also a little confused. Why would this thing suddenly appear here? Impossible. Lian Xian looked at the book realm in front of her. This guy is arrogant. It can be said that it only obeys master. Why would it come here, and even recognize you as its master? Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, Lian Xian suddenly grabbed the book realm. A moment later, she was stunned. It's her. Her. Yi Xian was puzzled. Miss Lian Xian. Lian Xian looked at Yi Xian. It's nothing. Since this thing has already recognized you as its master, then make good use of it. This thing is extremely powerful, not any weaker than your executing heaven sword. If used well, it will have a miraculous effect, especially in suppressing one's realm. This thing can suppress one's realm, so when you fight in the future, you can keep your opponent in this book realm and suppress their realm. Suppress one's realm. Yi Xian's expression changed. Miss Lian Xian, can this really be done? Lian Xian nodded. It can. Not only that, if you can control the world spirits in this book realm, with their power, you can completely destroy experts of the same level as Chen Tian's clone. Yi Xian asked, what about the main body? Lian Xian rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. If the main body was so easy to kill, then Chen Tian wouldn't have become the Myriad Dimensions Academy's lord. Yi Xian smiled. That's true. Lian Xian said solemnly, however, this thing is extremely powerful. Of course, the prerequisite is that you have the ability to subdue those word spirits. Yi Xian asked, how do I subdue them? Lian Xian said, come with me. After saying that, she directly brought Yi Xian into the book realm. As soon as they entered the book realm, Yi Xian looked around curiously. There were too many books around. Lian Xian said, feel those word spirits. Remember, be polite. These word spirits have their own intelligence, so they are very difficult to subdue. You have to be humble, don't lose face, otherwise. At this moment, a crimson, extinguished character suddenly floated in front of Yi Xian. It directly flew to Yi Xian's hand, then lightly rubbed against Yi Xian's hand, extremely docile. Lian Xian was silent. End of this chapter. Chapter 855. Yi Xian was a little confused. He could feel that the word was trying to please him. Here came the question. Why did the book realm appear here? Not only did it appear here, but it also recognized him as its master. He did not think that he was the master of destiny who would allow such a divine object to submit to him. What was going on? Yi Xian looked at Lian Xian. Miss Lian Xian, you should know what happened, right? Lian Xian nodded. It's her. Her. Yi Xian was slightly startled. You mean the plain-dressed woman? Lian Xian nodded. She looked up at the starry sky. If I'm not wrong, Chen Tian went to look for her. That big idiot. Yi Xian felt relieved. Clearly, as Lian Xian said, the Myriad Dimensional Academy went to look for the plain-dressed woman. And the result was obvious. The plain-dressed woman had definitely won. Not only did she win, but she also snatched a treasure for him. Yi Xian's heart warmed. He looked at the end of the starry sky. She had not forgotten about him. Lian Xian suddenly said, it has recognized you as its master. Moreover, the word spirits have also recognized you as their master. You can use them to fight at any time. Yi Xian looked at the annihilate word in his hand. How powerful is it? Lian Xian said, "You'll know once you try it." Yi Xian thought about it and nodded. "All right." After saying that, he opened his palm. The annihilate word directly merged into his palm. The next moment, he fiercely pushed his palm forward. Boom! In an instant, the space tens of thousands of zhang in front of him turned into nothingness. Yi Xian was struck dumb at the sight of that. What kind of power was this? Yi Xian was shocked. Even his immeasurable sword wasn't this terrifying. This word actually had such great power. At this moment, Lian Xian suddenly said, "You can try merging this word into your sword." Merging it into the sword. Hearing Lian Xian's words, Yi Xian suddenly became a little excited. The power of this word was so strong. If it was integrated into his sword, wouldn't it be even stronger? Thinking of this, Yi Xian hurriedly activated the destroy word. This word was very cooperative and directly integrated into the executing heaven sword in his hand. Boom! The executing heaven sword trembled violently, and a powerful aura of destruction swept out from the tip of the sword. At the same time, Yi Xian's hand cracked. Yi Xian was shocked, and he quickly let go of the executing heaven sword. The executing heaven sword trembled violently, and a powerful force surged out from it. The space around Yi Xian and Lian Xian began to crack bit by bit. Yi Xian looked at his hand with a solemn expression. His own physical body could be said to be extremely terrifying, but he hadn't expected that his hand wouldn't be able to withstand the power of this word. Moreover, he hadn't even activated the executing heaven sword. If he did, then his entire arm would probably explode. Fortunately, it was a celestial sword. Any other sword wouldn't be able to withstand the power of this word. At this moment, Lian Xian spoke solemnly, "This sword of yours is really amazing. Any other sword would probably have been reduced to ashes." Yi Xian nodded, "Indeed." Lian Xian said, "Put it away. This word and the book realm can be considered your trump card. Save it for the critical moment." Yi Xian nodded slightly. He put away the executing heaven sword and the book realm. Now, he had another trump card. Lian Xian looked at Yi Xian, "What do you plan to do now?" Yi Xian looked up at the starry sky in the distance, "I'll go explore it." As soon as he finished speaking, he transformed into a ray of light and vanished into the starry sky. Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as the crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. "Why?" At this moment, a timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling. She was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned, "Yi Ling. What are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly, "This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Leave." Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the great elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she mustered her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan for the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting with his life on the line for the clan, and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is really unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged, "Whether he discards his position or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this moment, the new crown prince, Yi Lang, suddenly smiled and said, he should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The great elder said coldly, then flog 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he is fighting with his life on the line for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince, Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to show off had come. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang will inherit the position of crown prince. What are you shouting for? As he said this, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded. Yi Ling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She just covered her cheek tightly. Yi Long sized up the guard and asked with a smile, what's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed, your subordinate, Jianghu, greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, you are very good. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply, your subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded slightly, drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show any mercy. Do you understand? Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu suddenly stopped when he saw something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the South Mountain. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu. As he walked up to Yi Ling, seeing Yi Ling in such a state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out, brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the Yi clan elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a hint of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yiling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yiling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yiling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince, why did you discard him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yiling coldly, this is a matter of the clan, why are you interrupting? Leave. Yiling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the Great Elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides. Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and we do not know if he is dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged, discard him or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed, she should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog her 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yiling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he is risking his life for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you shouting about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yi Long sized up the guard and asked with a smile, what's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed, subordinate Jianghu greets the prince. Yi Lang nodded, you're not bad. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed, this subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince. Yi Lang nodded slightly, drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show mercy. Understood? Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged at Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu. As he walked up to Yi Ling, seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Chapter 856. In the dark, Yi Xian looked in front of him. There stood a man. The man wore a feathered robe that seemed to be weaved from feathers. He wore a white square scarf on his head and held a feather fan in his hand. He had a meaningful smile on his face as if everything was under his control. At this moment, a woman slowly walked to the man's back. She wore a dark green dress, and her hair reached her waist. Her jade-like arm was wrapped with a golden ribbon, and the end of the ribbon fell to the ground, fluttering gently in the wind. The woman lowered her head and looked down. From her position, she could see the dual-realm sky. They failed. The strategist smiled. They underestimated the enemy. This four-dimensional universe isn't as weak as we thought. Or rather, the people at the top aren't weak at all. The woman tilted her head and looked at the strategist. Many people are looking at our Myriad Dimensions Academy as a joke. The strategist said softly, "The one who laughs last is the king, isn't that right?" The woman said in a low voice, "Why did the academy head issue a wanted order and let everyone know about it?" The strategist looked down and said softly, "Because the people below might really be very strong." The woman looked at the strategist. "The academy head wants to kill with a borrowed knife?" The strategist smiled and said, "It would be best if you could kill someone else with a knife. However, I'm guessing that the mansion master doesn't want to kill someone with a knife. Instead, he wants to use someone else to exhaust Yi Xian and the people behind him." The woman frowned. "Are the people below really that strong?" The strategist looked at the woman and smiled. "Lin Lang, do you remember the motto that the prophet left behind in Myriad Dimensions Academy?" Lin Lang said, "Don't underestimate yourself. Don't underestimate anyone." The strategist nodded. "Many people die because they underestimate their enemies. A lion needs to use its full strength to catch a rabbit." Lin Lang looked at the strategist. "I heard that you sent people to find his sister." The strategist smiled. "Do you think I'm despicable?" Lin Lang was silent. The strategist smiled. "We can't just use brute force and violence to deal with our enemies. We need to find his weakness. Once we find it, we can use our strongest power to attack their weakest point." "What's Yi Xian's weakness?" "It was his sister. Find Yi Ling's weak point and defeat him in one strike." At this point, he looked down and said, "There is no such thing as being despicable when dealing with an enemy. There is only winning and losing." Lin Lang said, "I want to see the so-called geniuses of the four-dimensional universe." After saying that, she directly flew down. The strategist chuckled and left. In the dark, Yi Xian did not make a move. Look for Yi Ling? If it was in the past, he would have killed this strategist at all costs. But now, he wouldn't, because only he knew how terrifying Yi Ling was. That was an existence that could suppress his bloodline at any time. Of course, no matter how strong she was still his little sister. This was something that no one could change. Yi Xian turned around and left. Very soon, he arrived in front of a huge altar. Four black-robed experts stood on top of the altar. In front of the four of them was a blood-red ball. At this moment, the ball was constantly emitting a red aura that slowly spread towards the seal Lian Qian had placed on it. Corrosion. The red aura was corroding Lian Qian's seal. Yi Xian glanced at the four of them. In the next moment, he disappeared. The instant Yi Xian disappeared, the expressions of the four people on the altar changed. They immediately stopped. At this time, a sword light flashed above the altar. Chi 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 chi. Four bloody heads flew into the air. Yi Xian extended his left hand to the left and then clenched it. With this clench, he grasped the executing heaven sword, which was covered in blood. Yi Xian looked at the blood ball in front of him. With a wave of his right hand, he disappeared along with the blood ball. Just as Yi Xian disappeared, an old man suddenly appeared on the scene. On the left side of the old man's chest, there was a small, Wei character. An expert from the Myriad Dimensions Academy. The old man glanced at the 4 corpses on the ground. He looked at the right side of the altar. There was a crystal ball there. With a light hook of his hand, the crystal ball turned into a water screen in front of him. An image appeared on the water screen. In the image, a swordsman flashed past and 4 heads fell to the ground. This swordsman was Yi Xian. The old man pondered for a moment and said, "Inform the others that he's here." "Yes." A voice sounded behind him. The old man glanced around. "You're quite daring." After saying that, he disappeared. In a dark corner, Yi Xian sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. A blood-red ball floated in front of him. At this moment, Lian Qian's voice sounded in his mind. "This thing is called the boundary-breaking pearl. It contains a lot of blood qi and evil qi. The evil qi is very strong. You can absorb it to strengthen your bloodline." "No, you can't absorb it." She suddenly remembered that Yi Xian's bloodline was already terrifying enough. If he absorbed this thing, would Yi Xian be able to suppress it? He definitely wouldn't be able to suppress it. Yi Xian didn't dare to absorb it. Although this thing was good, he couldn't control his bloodline. Lian Xian said, "Use it at a critical moment." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "I don't want to be at a critical moment." As he said that, he put away the boundary-breaking pearl. Lian Xian said softly, "You have to think of a way. Otherwise, the seal will break in 2 months. At that time, the 4-dimensional universe will be in danger. You have to understand that humans are greedy." What is the 4-dimensional universe in the eyes of the 5-dimensional experts? It's a piece of fat meat. The big fish eats the small fish. This is the rule of every world. Right now, the 4-dimensional universe is the small fish. Yi Xian was silent. Lian Xian continued, "Many people won't come to snatch your pagoda because they know their limits. They know that this pagoda is something that only the big shots can fight for. Therefore, their target will be the 4-dimensional universe. Simply put, it's to plunder. Enslave." Yi Xian said softly, "I originally thought that the 5-dimensional universe would be different from the 4-dimensional universe." Lian Xian said, "It's the same in every world. Some powerful civilizations are powerful not only because they have great strength, but also because they are crueler than other civilizations and races. Everywhere, it's survival of the fittest. The weak will be eliminated." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand." As he said that, he looked around. "Is this the 5-dimensional universe?" Lian Xian said, "No, this can be said to be the boundary between the 4-dimensional universe and the 5-dimensional universe. You have to cross this boundary to reach the 5-dimensional universe." "Why, do you want to go to the 5-dimensional universe?" Yi Xian shook his head. "I don't want to go. I just want to understand it." Lian Xian said, "You want to understand Yiling?" Yi Xian nodded. Lian Xian said in a low voice, "She's in the Azura Hell. That place is not something you can go to now." Yi Xian said, "Even with my current strength, I can't." Lian Xian said, "You're not weak, but you're not strong enough to walk around the 5-dimensional universe. Don't look down on this world even a little bit. There are many people who can kill you." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand." Lian Xian asked, "What are your plans now?" Yi Xian said softly, "To kill." After saying that, he turned his head and looked into the distance. "Someone's coming." In the distance, 2 men and a woman flew over. Soon, the 3 of them stopped not far in front of Yi Xian. The man in the lead was holding a long sword. He looked down and said softly, "It said that Yi Xian is a genius in swordsmanship. His attainments in swordsmanship are extremely profound. I don't know if it's true or not. Next to the longsword man, another man in a luxurious robe smiled. How strong can a swordsman from a low-level dimensional world be? The longsword man shook his head. Don't underestimate anyone. The man called Ada smiled and said, Eternal Wind, I'm not looking down on them. I know that the people of the four-dimensional universe are still pursuing the so-called Tao, and they don't even know what the Tao is. As he said that, he looked down at the four-dimensional universe. Their current civilization is too far behind us. Not to mention anything else, just the three of us are enough to sweep the entire four-dimensional universe. Eternal Wind chuckled. You're still the same. Think about it, if the people down there are so easy to bully, would the Myriad Dimensional Academy's Lord still issue this so-called arrest warrant? The person who kills Yi Xian can not only share the World Prison Pagoda with the Myriad Dimensional Academy, but also enter the Myriad Dimensional Academy's holy land to cultivate. Apart from that, they can also obtain a scroll of martial arts created by the Prophet. If the people down there are so easy to bully, they wouldn't have offered such an attractive condition. As he said that, he turned his head. This Myriad Dimensional Academy is trying to kill us with a borrowed knife. But that's fine too. Now that the restriction has been lifted, the four-dimensional universe is also a piece of fat meat for us. The woman beside him suddenly said, Fat meat? The corner of Eternal Wind's mouth rose. Think about it. With the strength of the three of us, can we find a place in the four-dimensional universe to establish a powerful force? The woman asked, and then? Eternal Wind smiled. What do you think? The woman glanced at Eternal Wind. Plunder. Eternal Wind nodded. Actually, there have been many people who wanted to plunder the four-dimensional universe since a long time ago. Unfortunately, the restriction set by the Prophet is too strong. No one has any way to go down. But now, the Myriad Dimensional Academy has removed the restriction. Moreover, they're allowing others to go down. This is an opportunity for us, and we have to grasp it. As for how much we can reap, that will depend on our own luck. Ada laughed. Eternal Wind, your idea is not bad. I heard that there is a black-yellow great world down there. That is Yi Xian's lair. We will choose that place. Haha. Eternal Wind smiled. Let's go. Let's get rich. Get rich, get rich. Ada laughed loudly. The three of them were about to go down when Eternal Wind suddenly turned his head. Not far away, a man was walking over slowly. The man was wearing a mask and his face couldn't be seen. The man walked in front of the three of them and smiled. The three of you want to go to the four-dimensional universe? Eternal Wind glanced at the man. You are? The man smiled. I'm Xian Yi from the Worldwide Academy. Just now, I heard that brother wants to go to the four-dimensional universe to get rich. Coincidentally, I also have the same idea. How about we go together? Chapter 857. The person in front of them was naturally Yi Xian. Worldwide Academy. Chang Feng sized up the man in front of him. Are you from Wuyuan or Literature Academy? Yi Xian smiled. Wuyuan. Wuyuan. Chang Feng glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian smiled. It should be your first time going to the four-dimensional universe, right? Chang Feng nodded. Yes. Yi Xian smiled. I've been there once before, so I'm quite familiar with the place. If the three of you are willing, we can go together. Chang Feng looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. At this moment, the woman beside her suddenly sent a voice transmission. There's something strange about this person. Ada also said, be careful. Chang Feng was silent for a moment, and then he looked at Yi Xian and smiled, of course. Then please lead the way, Brother Xian. Yi Xian laughed. The three of you, come with me. After saying that, he walked towards the distance. Ada glanced at Yi Xian and sent a voice transmission to Chang Feng. I'm afraid this person doesn't come with good intentions. Chang Feng smiled. we can use him. Ada hesitated and nodded, that's true. Soon, the four of them arrived at the four-dimensional universe. In the starry sky, Chang Feng looked at Yi Xian, Brother Xian, do you know that Yi Xian? Yi Xian nodded and smiled, I know about Dao Yi. Chang Feng asked, how strong is this person? Yi Xian hesitated and smiled, he's not bad in the four-dimensional universe, but in the eyes of the three of you, he can't even withstand a single blow. Oh. Chang Feng smiled, is that so? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, brother, you should know that the martial arts civilization of the four-dimensional universe is much weaker than our five-dimensional universe. How strong would a swordsman from such a world be? In my opinion, if the three of you wanted to kill him, it would only take a few seconds. Chang Feng looked at Yi Xian, is Yi Xian really as weak as you say? Yi Xian laughed and said, otherwise, do you all think that he is very strong? Eternal Wind shook his head. If he was really that weak, would your Myriad Dimensional Academy still issue this wanted order? Yi Xian smiled. Because there seems to be some experts from the four-dimensional universe behind him. Eternal Wind stared at Yi Xian, those experts are so strong that your Myriad Dimension Academy can't do anything about them? Yi Xian smiled and said, I don't know about that. I'm just a small student in Wuyuan. That's all. Chang Feng stared at Yi Xian without saying anything. Meanwhile, Ada suddenly said, aren't we going to the Sky-Earth world? At that time, wouldn't we know Yi Xian's true strength? Yi Xian nodded. Right. When we arrive at the Sky-Earth world, we'll be able to fight Yi Xian. Eternal Wind glanced at Yi Xian and said, Brother Xian, why have you come here? Yi Xian laughed and said, I'm here to fish for some benefits. When he spoke up to hear, he paused for a moment and said, looks like you're very suspicious of me. Since it's like that, then I won't be joining the three of you. Farewell. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Eternal Wind looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Right at this moment, Ada suddenly said, Brother Xian, wait. Yi Xian stopped and turned around to look at Ada. Ada laughed and said, Brother Xian, our goal is to get rich. Since we have the same goal, then we can join forces. In any case, our target is Yi Xian. Isn't that right? Eternal Wind laughed and said, Brother Xian, I don't have any other intentions. You know that we have to be cautious when we're outside. Yi Xian nodded lightly, I completely understand. Do the three of you want to kill Yi Xian? Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From this moment onward, Yi Xian's position as Crown Prince is removed and Yi Lang will succeed him. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a hint of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned, Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a crown prince, why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling, this is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and didn't dare to look directly at the Great Elder. However, she didn't leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. Once again, she bowed to the elders, Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He's fighting for the clan, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged, whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new crown prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times, as a warning to others. The great elder coldly replied, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince, Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince's position, and it's everyone's wish. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she didn't cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled, what's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed, this subordinate, Jianghu, greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, you're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I'll need 10 personal guards. From now on, you'll be my personal guard. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the crown prince, and I'm willing to die 1,000 deaths. Yi Lang nodded, drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall, do not hold back. Understood. Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Jianghu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was dressed in a tight-fitting robe that was tattered, and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Within the ancestral hall, all the elders were frowning. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and he charged towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped down on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yiling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yiling, what are you doing?" The girl called Yiling bowed to everyone in the hall, as she asked timidly, "Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The Great Elder looked at Yiling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Leave." Yiling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. This is truly unfair. Impudent." The Great Elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The Great Elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Jianghu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed, and quickly bowed deeply. "I'll go through fire and water for the prince, and I'll do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand?" Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu saw something, and suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and his robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder squinted his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt dizzy, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and rushed towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save save me." Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yiling's side. Seeing Yiling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu, and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Chapter 858. Li Yunqi looked at Yi Xian. "What's your name?" Yi Xian smiled. Mo Qiuyan. This was the name of the Wuyuan student he had killed. The reason he had changed his name was because he wanted to be more cautious. Xuanya. Yi Xian. If he met someone with a meticulous mind, he could easily expose himself. Moreover, if he met someone from the Myriad Dimension Academy and there was no Xuanya, it would be a bit embarrassing. Just like what Changfeng had said before, it was always good to be careful when going out. Li Yunqi looked at Yi Xian. "Did that dead Changfeng call you Brother Xian?" Yi Xian smiled. Alias. Li Yunqi looked at Yi Xian and nodded. "Follow me." With that, he turned and left. Yi Xian looked at Li Yunqi. He could feel that this person was a bit on guard against him. It had to be said that these people were very cautious. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and followed. At this moment, Lanxiu and the others had already been called back to the black-yellow great world. Because more and more experts from the fifth dimension had come, they had to go back to guard the black-yellow great world. As for the experts from the dual realm sky, they had also been called back to the black-yellow great world. The current dual realm sky was not a safe place. Grand Elder Chen and the others also knew this, so they chose to go to the black-yellow great world. Unity. Now everyone knew that the people of the fourth dimension had to be united. Otherwise, facing the people of the fifth dimension, everyone could only wait for death. On the way, Li Yunqi suddenly asked, "Where did Brother Mo come from?" Yi Xian smiled. "If Brother Li doesn't believe me, I will leave." Li Yunqi looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian also did not say anything. A moment later, Li Yunqi brought Yi Xian to a starry sky. Just as they entered, several divine senses swept over. These divine senses directly fell on Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked into the distance and clenched his fists. Boom! A powerful force surged out of his body, and those divine senses were directly shattered. A voice sounded from afar. Then, a man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and Yi Xian. The man wore a black robe with a golden dragon embroidered on it. The man looked at Yi Xian. "Who are you?" His tone was overbearing. Yi Xian said, "Mo Qiuyan." The man looked at Li Yunqi, and Li Yunqi said, "I just got to know him. He's also here to reap some benefits." The man was expressionless. "Is it useful?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Won't you know once you try?" The man looked at Yi Xian. In the next moment, a powerful dragon might swept towards Yi Xian. Dragon might? What he was least afraid of in this life was the dragon's might. After all, there was once an ancient golden dragon that had fused with his soul. Yi Xian did not move at all, allowing the dragon's might to strike him. Boom! The space around Yi Xian trembled violently and shattered, but Yi Xian was completely fine. Seeing this scene, the man narrowed his eyes. A hint of surprise flashed in Li Yunqi's eyes. The man looked at Yi Xian. "You've absorbed my dragon's might." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Can't I?" The man was about to attack again when Li Yunqi suddenly said, "Jun Wuyan, don't forget that we're here. The real purpose of this trip." The man named Jun Wuyan hesitated for a moment, then gave up on attacking. He glanced at Yi Xian and did not say anything. Li Yunqi said, "Where are they?" Jun Wuyan opened his palm, and a golden jade seal appeared in his hand. He chanted a few words, and soon, the space not far away from the three of them suddenly cracked. Jun Wuyan kept the jade seal. Let's go. After saying that, he walked into the cracked space. Li Yinqi looked at Yi Xian. Let's go. After saying that, he also followed. Yi Xian glanced around and then followed in. After entering, the scene changed, and the three of them came to an unknown hall. In front of the hall, Yi Xian found that there were two women and a man. The man was about 20 years old, with long hair, and he carried a zither on his back. In his hand, he was holding an emerald green flute. Not far from the man sat a woman. The woman was lying on a stone block with her legs crossed, and there was a black iron chain wrapped around her arm. Opposite her, a woman in a long dress leaned against a long pillar with her arms crossed. She seemed to be resting. Seeing that Yi Xian and the other two had come, the man with the zither looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Li Yinqi looked at everyone. Everyone, our goal this time is to kill Yi Xian. You may not know much about Yi Xian. This person is young, but his swordsmanship has reached the breaking realm of this world. In addition, his realm has also reached the life-breaking realm of this world. He also has two extremely powerful swords in his hands. One is called the Executing Heaven Sword. This sword is extremely sharp and is known as the sharpest sword in the four-dimensional universe. If you meet this person, you must not fight this sword head-on. At this time, the woman sitting on the stone block not far away suddenly said, "Is he that strong?" Li Yinqi nodded. "I have already checked. Even in the five-dimensional universe, this sword is a divine weapon. You'd better not underestimate the power of this sword. Otherwise, you may pay with your lives." At this time, the man with the zither suddenly asked, "What about the soul-suppressing sword?" Li Yinqi said, "This thing is very effective against the soul. When you fight with him, you must not let your body be destroyed. Otherwise, this sword can easily destroy your soul." At this point, he paused and then said, "However, the real strength of this Yi Xian is not these two swords, but his bloodline. This person's bloodline is extremely strange. Once he activates it, he will be like a madman and his battle strength will soar to an unreasonable level." Bloodline? At this time, the woman leaning against the pillar suddenly opened her eyes. "What bloodline?" Li Yinqi smiled. "Qian Mo, I almost forgot that you also have a special bloodline." The woman called Qian Mo looked at Li Yinqi and asked, "What bloodline does he have?" Li Yinqi shook his head. "I don't know. I only know that his bloodline is extremely terrifying. Once it is activated, his battle strength will soar. Therefore, if we attack, it's best to kill him in one blow and not give him any chance to activate his bloodline." At this point, he paused and then said, "According to my investigation, there are a few stronger people in the black-yellow great world. These people are Yi Xian's friends, and their battle strength is not low. In addition, the powerhouses of the dual realm sky have also come to the black-yellow great world. Therefore, we can't attack the black-yellow great world by force. We can only use a trick to lure Yi Xian out." Jun Wuyan suddenly asked, "How do we lure him out?" Li Yinqi smiled. "It's very simple. Use his younger sister." "Younger sister?" Not far away, the woman sitting on the stone pillar suddenly sat up and looked at Li Yinqi. "He has a younger sister?" Li Yinqi nodded. "This person attaches great importance to his younger sister. However, not long ago, his younger sister suddenly disappeared, and we still don't know where she is. We can make use of this to lure him here, and then kill him in one strike." Jun Wuyan said in a low voice, "Don't forget that he still has the prison pagoda." "The prison pagoda?" Li Yinqi nodded. "Yes. Therefore, if we make a move, we must not hold back. We must not hold back at all." After saying that, he looked at the crowd. "Everyone, this person was able to make the Worldwide Academy return empty-handed several times. He is not an ordinary person. Don't underestimate him just because he is from the four-dimensional universe. Otherwise, we will pay a painful price. Jun Wuyan suddenly said, "Brotherly, I know that Yi Xian is not ordinary, but to be honest, we don't need to take him too seriously. The martial arts civilization of the four-dimensional universe is like this. No matter how strong he is, how strong can he be?" The woman sitting on the stone pillar also said, "It's right to be cautious. However, as Wuyan said, we don't need to take this person too seriously." The man carrying the guqin suddenly said softly, "No matter what, don't underestimate this person." As Brotherly said, "It's fine if we don't make a move. Once we make a move, it's best to kill him in one blow. Moreover, we must be fast. Soon, more and more people will come down. At that time, others may beat us to it." Li Yunqi nodded. "Yes, I have received news that more and more people are coming to the four-dimensional universe, especially some big sects and families. They are preparing to send their disciples and people down to train." On the side, Jun Wuyan said with a smile, "It seems that the five-dimensional universe wants to use the four-dimensional universe as a training ground. However, isn't the four-dimensional universe an excellent training ground for them?" The woman sitting on the stone pillar said with a smile, "Yes, it's the same for us." Jun Wuyan said with a smile, "Yes, this Yi Xian is our first prey." As he said that, he looked at Li Yunqi. "Brotherly, who do you think is more suitable to lure him?" Li Yunqi looked at Yi Xian, who had been silent, and said with a smile, "How about we let Brother Mo do this?" Yi Xian was silent. Li Yunqi said with a smile, "Brother Mo only needs to lure him here and leave the rest to us. After this is done, the soul-suppressing sword on Yi Xian will be given to Brother Mo. How about it?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "I want the executing heaven sword." Li Yunqi laughed. "Sure. Anyway, we are not swordsmen. After this is done, we will give you the sword." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "What should I do?" Li Yunqi smiled slightly. "You go and report that you have Yi Ling's whereabouts. Yi Xian will definitely follow you. As long as he comes here, leave the rest to us." Yi Xian nodded. "Okay." As he said that, he turned around and left. At this moment, Jun Wuyan, who was not far away, suddenly said, "Wait." Yi Xian stopped and looked at Jun Wuyan. Jun Wuyan said in a deep voice, "You won't betray us, right?" Yi Xian spread out his hands. "Your Excellency, do you think I will benefit from betraying you? Moreover, I am a person from the fifth dimension. How can I team up with a fourth dimension ant?" Jun Wuyan glanced at Yi Xian and nodded slightly. "Happy working with you." Yi Xian nodded. "Happy working with you all." Li Yunqi nodded slightly. "Be careful, Brother Mo. Yi Xian is very cunning. You must be careful." Yi Xian nodded. "I will be very careful." Chapter 859. When he saw Yi Xian leave, Jun Wuyan suddenly said, "Brotherly, can he be trusted?" Li Yunqi smiled and said, "He has no reason to side with Yi Xian. After all, he's from the fifth dimension. If he sides with Yi Xian, then wouldn't he become the public enemy of the fifth dimension? Moreover, he's very weak. He knows very well that even if he sides with Yi Xian might not want him. So, he can only choose to trust us." The woman on the nearby stone block suddenly said, "Are we really going to give him that sword?" Li Yunqi roared with laughter. "Miss Huban, what do you think?" The woman called Huban gave Li Yunqi a thumbs up. "You're really cunning." Li Yunqi shook his head. "He's greedy." Jun Wuyan nodded. "Don't work together with someone who's too much stronger than you." Everyone fell silent when they heard this. Any kind of cooperation was actually established on the basis that everyone's strength was equal. If one side was too strong and the other side was too weak, then such cooperation was bound to have a bad ending for the weaker side. Li Yunqi opened his palm, and a palm-sized stone plate appeared in his hand. He silently recited a chant, and in next to no time, strands of white light suddenly flew out from the stone plate. In the end, these strands of white light completely entered the space around them. A formation. Li Yunqi said, I've already sealed the space here. After Yi Xian enters, the space here will be reinforced. He won't be able to easily break through the space here and escape. At that time, please don't hold back and strive to kill him with a single strike. Jun Wuyan nodded as well. Qian Mo, Huban, and brother Gu Qing. The three of you are dragons and phoenixes amongst men, and your strengths are extremely formidable. However, when you face Yi Xian later, please don't hold back and strive to not make any mistakes. The man with the zither on his back, Gu Qing, nodded slightly. Understood. Qian Mo, who was leaning against the pillar, nodded slightly as well. All right. Huban smiled and said, don't worry. Yi Xian's head is too valuable. I don't want to lose it because I underestimated him. Li Yunqi nodded slightly. That's good. As he spoke, he looked into the distance. I hope nothing unexpected happens. After Yi Xian left that space, he did not return to the black-yellow great world. Instead, he went to the dual realm sky. There were not many people left in the dual realm sky. To be more precise, there were no experts with a thought universe. Most of the experts in the dual realm sky had gone to the northern region of the black-yellow great world. Those who had appeared in the dual realm sky were basically all experts from the fifth dimension. Yi Xian was guarding the seal. Not long after, two men suddenly flew down from the seal. Both men were dressed in black robes and held long spears in their hands. After the two of them came down, they looked around and were about to leave when Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of them. When they saw Yi Xian, the two of them immediately became vigilant. Yi Xian looked at the spear-wielding man. Are the two of you here to kill Yi Xian? The spear-wielding man stared at Yi Xian. Who are you? Yi Xian said, I am Mo Qiuyan, also from the fifth dimension. Fifth dimension. The spear-wielding man sized up Yi Xian. What's the matter? Yi Xian smiled, it's nothing. After saying this, he turned around and left. At this time, the spear-wielding man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, staring at Yi Xian. What do you mean? Yi Xian was silent. The spear-wielding man was about to speak, but Yi Xian sighed, you're too late. The spear-wielding man narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Yi Xian said, that fifth dimension treasure has already fallen into someone else's hands. The spear-wielding man frowned. Yi Xian has already been killed? Yi Xian nodded, yes. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Yi Xian has already been killed. You're too late. The spear-wielding man said in a deep voice, who killed him? Yi Xian said, Li Yunqi, Jun Wuyan, and the others. Li Yunqi. The spear-wielding man frowned, Modu, Qing Nation. Yi Xian nodded, there are a total of 5 of them, and the 5 of them have already joined forces to kill Yi Xian. Yi Xian's treasure has already fallen into their hands. Hearing this, the spear-wielding man was silent. Yi Xian suddenly asked, do you want to fight? The spear-wielding man looked at Yi Xian, what do you mean? Yi Xian said, although they have already killed Yi Xian, they have yet to leave. Instead, they are hiding somewhere. Do you want to fight? The spear-wielding man shook his head, if there were 5 of them, we wouldn't be able to defeat them. Yi Xian said, divide them. The spear-wielding man looked at Yi Xian, divide them? Yi Xian nodded, as far as I know, they are currently unevenly dividing the spoils and there are already conflicts. Therefore, they haven't left. This is our chance. The spear-wielding man suddenly asked, why do you know so much? Yi Xian smiled, because I was in cahoots with them. However, after killing Yi Xian, they want to get rid of me. The spear-wielding man stared at Yi Xian and asked, why? Yi Xian shrugged, because I am the weakest. The spear-wielding man was silent. Yi Xian said, this is an opportunity because they may be leaving the 4th dimension soon. Once they leave the 4th dimension, it will be difficult to obtain the fifth dimension treasure. The spear-wielding man looked at the man beside him, and the man looked at Yi Xian. Our goal is not that treasure. Yi Xian nodded, understood. With that, he turned and left. His speed was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, he had already disappeared into the horizon. The spear-wielding man said in a deep voice, "Brother, what do you think?" The spear-wielding man looked at Yi Xian in the distance. "Follow him, don't let him find you." With that, the two disappeared from the spot. In the distance, Yi Xian flew in the air. Soon, he arrived at the space where Li Yunqi and the others were. As soon as he appeared, Li Yunqi and the others who were hiding in the dark suddenly became alert. There was no one behind Yi Xian. Seeing this, Li Yunqi frowned and directly appeared in front of Yi Xian. "He is not coming." Yi Xian looked a little flustered, and his tone was also a little shaky. "He is coming. I will leave the rest to you." With that, he turned and ran. He was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the distance. Seeing Yi Xian escape, Li Yunqi frowned slightly. "Coward." With that, he glanced around, but there was no trace of Yi Xian. Li Yunqi said coldly, "Yi Xian, I know that you are very good at concealment. If you want to know the whereabouts of your sister, then come out." At this time, the space in front of Li Yunqi suddenly cracked, and then a man walked out. The person who came was Yi Xian, but at this moment, he was not wearing a mask, but his real body. Li Yunqi looked at Yi Xian with a trace of fear in his eyes. "You want to know the whereabouts of your sister?" Yi Xian nodded. Li Yunqi said, "Hand over the divine item, and I will tell you where your sister is." With that, he slowly clenched his right hand. He was ready to attack. Because he knew that Yi Xian would definitely not hand over the divine item. However, in the distance, Yi Xian suddenly flicked his finger, and a Xiao Ta directly landed in front of him. Seeing this scene, Li Yunqi, who was ready to attack, was stunned. Jun Wuyan and the others in the dark were also stunned. He handed it over just like that? Are you kidding me? Yi, this chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page, Xian suddenly said. Where is she? Li Yunqi's mouth twitched. The development of this matter was a little different from what he had expected. Without thinking too much, Li Yunqi suddenly said angrily, "Attack." However, there was no movement around. Seeing this, Li Yunqi's face darkened. At this moment, he suddenly understood. Now that the tower was with him, what was everyone's goal? It was for the tower, not to kill Yi Xian. Since the tower was already with him, why would Jun Wuyan and the others in the dark attack Yi Xian? Li Yunqi knew that now, everyone was targeting him, not Yi Xian. He had to divert the conflict. Li Yunqi looked at Yi Xian and was about to speak, but at this time, Yi Xian suddenly said in horror, "You have an ambush." After saying that, he turned around and ran at an extremely fast speed, disappearing at the end of the starry sky in the blink of an eye. Li Yunqi was stunned. He ran away just like that? What was going on? As soon as Yi Xian disappeared, Jun Wuyan and the others appeared in front of Li Yunqi. Mo Qiuyan, who had escaped earlier, also appeared. Jun Wuyan looked at Li Yunqi, and Li Yunqi said in a deep voice, "Everyone, this matter is quite strange." At this time, Mo Qiuyan suddenly said, "This is the fifth-dimensional treasure. According to rumors, this thing can open the all-creation book house and obtain the prophet treasure." Hearing Mo Qiuyan's words, Li Yunqi suddenly looked at him and said, "What do you mean?" Mo Qiuyan said in a deep voice, "Brotherly, this treasure does not belong to you alone. It belongs to everyone. Don't tell me you want to keep it for yourself?" Li Yunqi said angrily, "You dare to sow discord." Mo Qiuyan seemed to be somewhat afraid and immediately retreated several zhang, not daring to say anything. Li Yunqi looked at the world prison pagoda in his hand. At this moment, he had to admit that he felt like he was dreaming. This pagoda was a little unreal. Divide? This thought flashed in Li Yunqi's mind, but it was just a flash. There was only one pagoda. How could he divide it? He could not divide it at all. Thinking of this, Li Yunqi looked at Jun Wuyan and the others and said with a smile, "Everyone, Li Yunqi, am not a selfish person. Since I have obtained the pagoda, I should share it with everyone. Therefore, I have decided." After saying this, he suddenly looked behind Jun Wuyan and the others. Yi Xian. Hearing Li Yunqi's words, Jun Wuyan subconsciously turned around. However, there was nothing behind him. Seeing this, Jun Wuyan's expression changed greatly. He immediately turned around, but at this moment, Li Yunqi had already disappeared into the horizon. Although Jun Wuyan fell for it, Gu Qing, who was carrying a zither on his back, did not fall for it. The instant Li Yunqi escaped, he immediately chased after him. However, this Li Yunqi's speed slightly exceeded his expectations. In the blink of an eye, Li Yunqi disappeared from this space, and Jun Wuyan and the others frantically chased after him. When Li Yunqi left this space, he encountered two men holding long spears. Seeing Li Yunqi, the spear-wielding man said ferociously, "That pagoda is really in your hands." After saying this, he was about to attack, but he was stopped by the man beside him. Because of this, Li Yunqi directly disappeared into the horizon. At the end of the horizon, Li Yunqi directly crushed a black stone. In the next moment, the space above his head directly trembled. Behind him, Jun Wuyan suddenly said, "He is calling the experts of Demonic City. Everyone, let's call together." Soon, the starry sky in the field began to tremble. Everyone was calling. P.S. Recently, before updating, I will check it several times. I dare not guarantee that there are no typos, but I will try to make sure there are no typos. If there are any mistakes, please correct me. End of this chapter. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.